welcome to Building Your First 2D Game using GameMaker. My name is Daniel Egan. I'm a developer evangelist out of Southern California. I've been a developer evangelist for about 6 years. Prior to that, I was an enterprise developer. And so coming to gaming was a little bit different to me, but about 2 years ago, I decided to build a game. The game I came up with is called Dave in the Cave. You'll see a little bit about that today. And I used GameMaker to build it, and it's available on all 3 platforms. You can get it on iOS, you can get it on Android, you can get it, of course, on Windows Phone as well. Today with me is Natalie.
Hi, my name is Natalie Golivornis. I'm also a tech evangelist. I'm located in the Dallas, Texas office. So I've been at Microsoft for almost 2 years now. Like Daniel, I also work with startup students and game developers with a special focus on game developers. Prior to Microsoft, I graduated from USC with a degree in engineering and also gained some experience at some other game companies.
We're glad you're here today. Make sure that when you're watching, join the MVA community. There's a lot of great stuff there for you. You can get points for this. You can see everything on screen to be able to join up. Today, as we're working through stuff, we hope you can work through stuff with us. You're going to need a few things. You're going to need GameMaker Studio. You're going to need Inkscape. That's where we're going to draw some of our assets. It's going to be a lot of fun in that session. You're also going to need Spine. Spine is a tool that allows you to do skeletons. And you'll also need the starter kits as well. So the way the day is going to go today is we're going to start with kind of an intro into game development. So when we're talking about GameMaker, we kind of want to give you a little feel about what GameMaker is all about, what the IDE is like, and get you comfortable with the development environment. After that, we're going to go into some basics of collisions and events so that when you're working in the game environment, you can see how things move around and see how things move back and forth. Next, we're going to go to finding assets for your game. So when you build a game, you obviously need characters, you need blocks, you need things, enemies, you need things to fight against. And so when you're fighting against them, you need the assets to be able to do that. So first, we're going to show you how to find them on the internet. And then after that, the next module is we're going to show you how to create your own. So that one's going to be a lot of fun. After all that, we're going to have a session that brings it all together. So the assets you created, the assets you found, we'll show you how to bring them into the game and make the starter kits that we're going to show you your own game. So Natalie, you want to start out with the introduction, the agenda?
So for Module 1, we're going to start out with a history of GameMaker, and then we'll look over the starter kits that we'll be using today and also that we've provided online. Take a look at the programming languages that you can use with GameMaker, GML, and then we'll do a little loop around the IDE and look at how the tool works, and then lastly, we'll talk about the GameMaker store. So let's get started and talk about a little bit of history of GameMaker. So GameMaker was first created by a teacher named Mark Overmars, and it was a tool for creating 2D animations. And he had the intention of it being a drag and drop tool, so really simple to use. GameMaker actually started out being called Amino in 1999, and it grew from there to become what we know as GameMaker. And in 2007, they joined up with this company based out of Scotland called Yo-Yo Games. Fun fact, the CEO of that company is Sandy Duncan, who's actually was the Xbox VP, I believe. So just something fun to know about that. So what is GameMaker? GameMaker is a game environment for you to create your first game. It's really awesome because you don't need to have any programming experience, but if you wanted to do that, you could use GameMaker language. It also has an asset store, so if you're not an artist or you're not a programmer, you can find those parts to complement your game dev experience to make your first game. So let's look over a little bit at some cool games that have been made with GameMaker.
Okay, actually, we're going to, let's go ahead and do this instead. So we're going to jump over to my PC. One of the things you're going to see today is we're going through the starter kits. The starter kits are very simplistic. And they're very simplistic for a reason, because the starter kits are there to give you the basics that you need to get started. I don't want to overwhelm you with way too much stuff in a game. But the important thing that I like to make sure people know is the games we're showing you today don't show the full power of what GameMaker can give you. So if we look at on screen the showcase, if you go to yoyogames.com and go to the showcase, you'll see just tons of games and really cool games, very exciting, great graphics, cool interaction. And so when you get a chance, go ahead and check those out, and we'll see the great games that you can create with GameMaker. The next thing we want to talk about actually is the different types of GameMaker, because this is actually important. So on the Yo-Yo Games again, if you just go to the GameMaker tab, you'll notice down here the different types or the different tiers they have. So almost everything we're doing today, you're going to be able to do with the free Standard Edition. You can see the Standard Edition is, makes you register, but besides that, it gives you unlimited resources. It gives you the ability to create the game you want. It also allows you to export it to a Windows EXE. So you can share your games with your friends. The one thing that we're going to show you today that you will not be able to do is the advertising. So you notice right here it says Developer Services Portal. And Developer Services Portal is kind of a hidden thing that means advertising and other stuff. So that's the one thing you won't be able to do today. But you'll notice if you wanted to actually export to Windows 8, you can jump over to the Professional one. It's only $49. And then they have a Masters Collection. The Masters Collection allows you to do absolutely everything. Other than that, where you want to export the game can be done by just purchasing modules or jumping over. One of the cool things that's been added recently is both Xbox One and PlayStation export. So if you build your game in GameMaker, you can actually export to Xbox One. So that's actually a really cool feature. The last thing, and I do this may sound silly, but I've been in dev communities for a long, long time, and the ones that really thrive are the ones that have a great community to help fellow developers. And if you go to the support tab and jump over to community, you'll go over to their forums, and their forums are just absolutely fantastic. Developers, game developers that are there to help you with any questions you have. So if you get stuck on anything that you start trying, based on what we're showing you today, make sure you jump over to the community, ask your question. There's people there to help you. So let's actually talk about the next part. So as we mentioned in the beginning, we have a few starter kits. And starter kits are something that allow you to not have to start from scratch. So starting from scratch is tough, just putting the character on there, throwing a block on there, it can take you a while to, get your platforms or get your maze built or get your endless runner. And actually those are the three starter kits we have. We have a platform, a maze, and endless runner game. Because those are traditionally the games that people like to build and that people like to play. So let's go ahead and show you those just a little bit. Let me bring that up. And we'll start with the platform. A lot of what we're going to be showing you today is going to be in the platformer game. We'll jump between a few of them, but I'll go ahead and run that. And you'll see that in my drop down here I have the ability to run and put it on many different things, but we're just going to leave it at Windows and run the game so you can get a feel for what we're going to be working with today. So these are fully complete games, and what I mean by that is they have a beginning, they have an end, they have a few levels, and then they have things that you need. So touch screen controls, left, right, the ability to move around and jump up and down, grab coins, all the stuff you'd expect to have, enemies that kill you, etc. And so we'll go through all these features. The next one we'll show you is, some people like a top-down maze game. So if we look at the maze game, again, there's your start screen, and you have the ability to find different stuff, to walk through the maze, unlock doors, obviously grab the key. I'll keep going until I grab the key. You can see that item shows down here. So again, these are made to give you the ability to see how something was built. And the last one I'll show you is the endless runner. Endless runners are fun, and quite honestly, after building Dave in the Cave, which we'll show you again today as well. Oh, let me change that. We'll actually show you how to fix that later and why that error came up. It's part of the Windows 8 development stuff. And so go ahead and click on this. Endless Runner's really cool because it allows you to actually create a game. Got it. Allows you to create a game quickly that can last a while, because one of the things you'll learn when you're building games, if you're building a platformer game, the hardest part, in my opinion, was once I got the basics and the movements and everything else, was designing the levels and figuring out levels. And building 20 levels takes a long time, where an endless runner gives you the ability to do one and then just throw different stuff at them. So I actually enjoy endless runners quite a bit. Okay, so one of the interesting things that Natalie mentioned earlier, she mentioned drag and drop. So there's two different ways to actually build a game in GameMaker. One is using GML, which is their GameMaker language, and then one is through drag and drop. And originally, like she said, the game was made for his students, and he wanted them to easily be able to, not write C++ code, but to drag and drop different items and give them the ability to create a game, get the excitement of building a game, and quite honestly, be very sneaky in teaching them programming. Because even in the drag and drop, you're talking about if loops and variables and stuff like that, but in a drag and drop way. So I'm going to show you just quickly a little difference between the two. So let's go to this game, and I'll show you what this is. This is like a half-made game. You'll see the full version of this game later. But you can see that I have a little guy that can jump around, traditional platform game. Not much here, just the basic blocks for him to land on. And if we look at this, let's go ahead and open up this room, and we'll go through these things a little more later. You'll notice that if I hover over him, I need to start up zoom it so you can see this. If I put my mouse over him, you'll see that right down here on the bottom, he is a object player D&D. So he's a drag and drop player, and it's named that because I named him that. But if we actually look at the objects themselves, we can see there's two, and we'll talk about objects in a little bit. But there's two players, and it doesn't matter which player actually dropped in the room, because if we look at them, let's open up the drag and drop, and we look at the regular object player, we can see that there's two ways to do everything. So in the drag and drop guy, you can see that every single thing is something that I've dragged over from the toolbox, whereas the one that's using GML, I'm actually writing code. Now, we're not going to dive deep into the code today, but the interesting thing about GML in GameMaker is that originally, like I said, he did drag and drop, but he wanted to make it easier for developers to do some simple advanced stuff using code instead of drag and drop. But what has happened over the years is most developers are using GML instead of drag and drop. You'll find that in the forums. You'll find that when you're talking to developers. It started out as just a kind of side thing, but it grew and grew to be able to allow developers to do some really cool stuff, some advanced stuff using GameMaker. So while we're in the IDE, I think it's important, and Natalie's going to help me here, whenever you open up a new development environment like this, for me, I'm comfortable with this. I've been using it for a while. But if you think about the first time that you used Visual Studio, if you think the first time you open it up, you're just like, wow, what are all these things? What are all these panels? And GameMaker can be, the same as that, where you're looking at it and you have no idea where to start. So what we're going to do is just give you a little lap around the IDE so you get comfortable with it. So Natalie, you want to start on that?
Yeah. So if we look over here on the left, we have what you could call the tree. So if we zoom into the top, we have our sprites here, and they have the little crosses, and you can expand those to see what all we have going on here. So if we go over to sprites, we have our list of sprites here. I'm looking at the platform game starter kit. So if you wanted to create a new sprite, you could right-click on the tree and do create sprite, or you can go up to the top and do resources, create sprite there. So let's just take a look at one of the ones that we already have in here. Here we have our sprite player idle, and you'll notice here that we have a really clear naming convention, because if you have maybe like a lot of levels or a lot of characters in your game, you want to keep those organized, just good development practices. So
these are the assets in your game. This is your character. These are your blocks. These are the enemies. Yes, you have to draw them so they can interact.
yeah, so here we have like the main player and also our little crab enemy. So you can load it as sprite over here, and we'll look more into detail later about how you can actually put in your own sprites and do all the editing with those. But here you can see that you can change the origin on your sprite. So we just have it at the center here, but maybe you wanted your sprite to turn from the side or something. So this is just basically how you put in your sprite and, you know, save any changes here with the green OK button. So also in the tree we have sounds and backgrounds. Putting those in works pretty similarly to the same way that sprites do. Right click or up at the resources to put one in there. We can take a look at some of the sounds that we've got in here right now. Let's look at the explosion. So just double click to open it, and you can preview the sounds here. Let's see. So we've got our explosion sound. Let's look at the warp portal. So we've got some fun sounds in here, and those can really add life to your game, whether you wanted to do, you know, like a level up sound or maybe the sound of your enemy exploding or something like that. We can also hop over to backgrounds, and here we can see we have a background for our main game. As you can see when we play the game, Daniel showed it earlier, we have that really cool starry dark blue background. And having a nice background can really make or break your game because it really adds to the experience. If we just had like a solid gray background, it wouldn't be as fun as this awesome dark blue thing that Daniel created.
Yeah, we're going to show you some very simple backgrounds in our games, but background, if it has a little depth, even if it has the parallax effect where backgrounds are moving at different speeds, really just adds depth to a very simple game and can make the difference between just an okay game and a great game. The next thing we're going to look at is, let me do here.
We've got paths next.
Yeah, paths right here. So paths are interesting. Paths are used not all the time, but a maze game that I showed you earlier is a great example of this. You can see that I have a placeholder here for a scarab. In the maze game, the scarab is the enemy, and the scarab's going to walk through the maze itself, and I have to avoid him. So I want him to walk on a very specific path. And so in paths, you'll see that in here that you can see that he'll start where you saw him in the room, and he's going to go up and down and up and down, and he'll go back and forth. Now, this is a very simplistic one. I actually used this in Dave in the Cave to create a trolley system where he ran and jumped into a trolley and took the trolley through the whole level of mine. And so it's a great way to have an object that follows a very specific path. The next thing we're going to look at is the next one down, and it's very actually simplistic. So even if you're doing drag and drop, you're going to, at one point, probably want to write a little bit of code. And so you're able to do that using scripts. So scripts allow you to write a little bit of code that from the drag and drop area, you can actually call that script, do some advanced functionality, and move on from there. So that's scripts. The next thing is shaders. So shaders we're just kind of going to talk about. Shaders is an advanced topic, and shaders just allow you to do really cool stuff with colors. And what I mean by that is instead of just, you know, the color blue, it allows you to put like shimmers on waters, and it allows you to take an image and move it like through the day as it gets darker during the day. The colors and the bleeding on the colors you chose for your character can get a little darker to reflect the room or the time of day in there. Again, they're a little advanced subjects, so we're not going to cover them in this session, but shaders are really cool. The next thing we're going to talk about is fonts. And fonts, quite simply, are when you want to draw something in your game, when you want to do a level screen, when you want to put some text out there, the fonts allow you to not just use the standard fonts, Arial, you know, the stuff that you're used to, but you can create your own custom fonts so that your game has its own custom look. And that's where you'll find on fonts. And then timelines. Timelines actually have a timeline in the Endless Runner. So let's open that up. And timelines allow you to do stuff at specific times. So you can see a step is every time a game loop runs. And so we'll talk about that when we dive a little bit more into code, but the step function is your game loop that runs every 30 times a second, up to 60 times a second. And so this is letting me do stuff at every step that I decide. I'm going to create an instance of cactus, create an instance of the fire arrow, create an instance of the bad guy. So as they were coming out in the game, I decided when they were coming out. Now you can randomize this instead of doing a timeline, but this is one great use of a timeline. Now the next section, so we've gone through most of this pretty quickly, again, to make you comfortable. This next section, your objects, this is where you're going to spend most of your time, and I'm actually going to go back to the platformer game to look at that, because we're going to look at object player. And again, Natalie said earlier that one of the things you want to do is sometimes if you're a beginning developer, this is the first time you've ever developed something, you'll see a lot of code where you'll see a lot of X variables and Y variables and zeros and ones, etc. Some of the stuff we're going to show you today is meant to show you how to organize stuff and how to create your variables in a way that not only you can read them when you come back to it, in a year to write more on your game, but other people that may be coding with you can understand what's going on. So you can see we have stuff in a nice file structure. And if we open up Object Player, the objects are where you're going to spend most of your time. So the objects in your game will utilize the sprites. You can see that I have set a sprite here. I can choose which one I want. It's this, the idle sprite to start. But here is, if you are a developer, these are like objects. GameMaker tries to be an OOP type of language, but it's missing stuff, it's missing classes, it's missing structs. But if you think of objects like you're maybe used to thinking of objects, you instantiate them. And in this create event, Natalie will talk about events in a little bit, and the create event is where you're going to instantiate things. Objects are the way you interact with the world. And objects interact together and against each other, and we'll talk more about that. They actually need somewhere to interact in,
Yeah.
and so that would be rooms, and Natalie can show you a little around there.
So if we look over at the room tree, you'll see that we have the start splash, level 1, level 2. So the room section is actually ordered by how you have it here in the hierarchy. So it's going to open with the splash, and then you want to have it in order of the levels that you want it to play in. So I was just messing around before and making some new rooms that we've got down here. But if, let's say, I wanted room 10 to actually be my level 1, I would move that up to the top. So you can basically think of rooms as levels in your game. So, I would put that up there if I wanted that to open up. And I'd create a room the same way that I've been creating the other things in my game here. Right-click, create room. And then when you're in here, you can scale it, you can rotate it, and we'll be able to add in other things like backgrounds and objects a little bit later on. But if we go back and look at the start splash room that we have, you can see here that we have one of these little question marks up in the corner. So those are actually objects that don't have any visual representation. But if you hover over it, we can see at the bottom that it is the object splash click. So down, well, now it's not there, but at the very bottom of the screen, you can see that it says object splash click. And then it gives you a little preview here of what your room looks like and what you've created. And just one thing about using GameMaker, if you want to zoom in, you can scroll in with your mouse, and you can pan like you would on other things by holding down your mouse wheel if you're using a mouse. So we touched on this a little bit earlier about how GameMaker has a really awesome asset store. So if you're not an artist or you're not a programmer and you want to find those other things to fill your game, you don't have to be held up by trying to create your own amazing art if that's not something you're interested in. So GameMaker has the asset store. So I'm just going to pull that up here. So the marketplace has a lot of things in here that you can buy. There are some free stuff, You can pay for it also. So anyone with a GameMaker license is able to use the store here. If you have a GameMaker Pro license, you can actually sell your own assets on here. GameMaker gets 30% of that, but that is also a really cool way for you, if you are an artist or a programmer that wants to put some of your work out there and make some revenue, you can use that too to put it into the marketplace, as well as, making some money off your own game.
Yeah, actually, in Dave in the Cave, one of the things I had wanted to do, if you play Dave in the Cave, you'll notice that he jumps a lot, and he climbs down ropes, but they're very static ropes. One of the things I wanted to do, he's in a cave, I wanted him to swing back and forth on a rope, and I actually had a really difficult time making that look real, so you'll see that it's not in my game. If you look in the GameMaker store, one of the things that they have, and I actually think it's a free one, is a whole extension pack that shows you how to do ropes. So if that would have been around when I built the game, I would have definitely bought that and incorporated it in my game. So those are the kinds of things that you can expect and look for in the GameMaker store that can be helpful to you.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Since there's already so many things going on with game development, you don't want to get stuck there. So now that we've gone over the history of GameMaker and taken a loop around the IDE, we've looked at drag and drop versus the GameMaker language and also talked about the awesome marketplace. We're just going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll go into all of this in more detail in 10 minutes.
See you in a bit. Welcome back to building your first 2D game using a GameMaker. I'm Daniel.
I'm Natalie.
And in this section, we're going to talk about probably the mainstay of what your game's going to be about, and that's movement and collision events. Before we start that, we're going to show you a little bit about the starter kits and opening projects. There's actually a couple ways to do that, and I'm going to show you that. We'll segue from there, and we'll talk about collisions and collision masks and the difference between the two, and show you a couple different ways to do it. Then we'll actually talk about room views. Room views are a really cool way to expand the world of your game and to expand each individual level that you have in a really cool way. And then at the end, we're going to show you how to work with events. Events are how we interact with the world, and Natalie's going to show you that. So before we start, we talked about the starter kits earlier, and the starter kits are, again, a way for you to jumpstart your gaming development. They're a really cool way to take them and modify them. You can see the link here, aka.ms, GM starter kits. But when you download them, they're going to be in a format you might not be used to. So let me go ahead and bring this up. So if we look at the GameMaker when you just start it up, you can see there's a bunch of tabs on here. And there's open, of course. On the first screen, if you've had some open before, you can just click on this and it would open it. You can have open, you can have new, and you can have import. And so when you download the starter kits, what you're actually going to see is these GMZ files. Now you can see I've actually already expanded these, and if we look in here, you can see the whole projects here. I can double click on this and this will open up the project, but if I double click on one of these, actually nothing's going to happen. So to open that up, you actually have to go to import. And so if I do import, and then we'll, let's see, negotiate to there, C, users, Daniel, let's see, Dropbox. And actually, there's some right here, so we'll just leave these here, same type of thing, instead of diving deeper. You can see I have an old version of Dave in the Cave. One of the important things I want to point out is this has a GMZ extension, but if we go to over here, you can see that there's different filters. Some of the sample games and some of the samples that you'll get either from the forums or from other places might be an older version. So make sure that if you're trying to open up an older version or an import one, that you can go down here. You can see there's ones from GameMaker 8, GameMaker 6. You might have to fix things, but it's, again, a really cool way to see how someone coded stuff.
So is GMZ the newest type of project file?
GMZ is the newest type of project file.
Cool.
And you'll notice if I open it up here or click on it, it allows me to do two things. First, it says, what's the import file that I'm using, and then down here it says, where do you actually want to save the project? The default is going to be under your Documents folder under GameMaker projects, but you might have a different place you want to do that. And then obviously you can set the name here. And you can see this one is actually a pretty cool one. It was a tutorial on working with any files. And all you do is just click on import, and it would open it up inside your environment, and you're ready to go.
So once you've imported that once, you can just open up the project again. You don't have to re-import it every time you work on it?
Yeah, just like we saw for the Endless Runner, the Maze, and Platform, these were the packages that I created. And then after I was done, it actually has the whole project unpacked. It's just an easy way. It's kind of like a zip file that zips your whole project up
Cool.
to make it easy for you. So, all right, so one thing actually I'll add, I'm going to do this quickly, because besides the starter kits that we're showing you right now, on that same tab, let's pop this open. It'll take just 1 second. There it comes. You can see there's demos and tutorials. Demos are full, completed games, kind of like the starter kits, and you can see it's organized in advanced, intermediate, beginner, etc. The Veg Ninja Swipe demo, etc. And then there's a tutorials tab. The difference is the demos is a completed project. It's something there for you to get your hands dirty with and dig into, where the tutorials will actually walk you through step by step different stuff, whether it's touch controls, whether it's HTML5 scaling, whether it's connecting to Facebook, etc. So make sure you check those out. They're a great way to learn not only how to use GameMaker, but how to do specific stuff inside of GameMaker.
They're also kind of good at helping you generate ideas. Maybe if you're having like a roadblock, you don't know what to do for one collision or something, you can go in and kind of like get motivated off their scripts and their stuff in there.
Yeah, I actually have no problem with stealing other people's code. So, and that actually sounded bad. Stealing the code from the GameMaker tutorials. Learning from it. Yeah, that's probably a better way to put it. So what we want to do next is actually talk about collisions and collision masks. This is the interaction that you're going to be having in your game, especially a platformer. And there's a few different factors you need to think about when you're working with collisions. The type of bounding box, and we're going to show you that. The type of collision, precise and non-precise, and we're going to show you where to define that in the sprite. I will tell you right now, do not use precise. Precise will eat up your CPU and your game will run really slow. There's rarely any place, especially in a platformer game, where you actually need to use precise. And I'll show you exactly what that means. Then some things that are going to come into play. You can either make your objects solid or not solid. And you can do collisions different way. Obviously, two solid things bumping together, you can detect that. But there's also a way to detect things based on the XY value of both objects. And then we want to talk about the response to a collision event. That's something Natalie is actually going to talk about when she's showing you events later.
I haven't used precise, but it wasn't intentional not use, so I want to see this.
Well, actually the bad thing, or not the bad thing, but the original thing in GameMaker was precise was on by default. And so people used it all the time, and they were wondering why their game was slow, because everything had precise. And I'll show you what that means. So normally you want to use a bounding box. And a bounding box is a square or a rectangle that goes around your game object. And you can see from what you're looking on the screen that you can have collisions without it actually touching the pixels of your object. There's different types you can have. You can have an oval one, you can have a rectangle, you can have a square one, and we'll show you that as well. But that's what a bounding box is. And the difference between the two collisions, if you look at the top one up here, a collision on top using a bounding box instead of precise collision, there'll be a collision when they're not touching. Whereas if you're using precise, the actual pixels have to overlap. But I'll tell you that that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all, because in gameplay, if you are, think about when you played Pac-Man back in the day, if you ever did, you could actually sink a little bit into that ghost without dying. You want to give people that leeway, that little extra second of, oh, I almost hit them, and go back. So the fact that they don't have to touch is actually a good thing in gameplay, and it's not very detectable by the naked eye. So while it may seem like, oh, I died because it didn't touch, it's not something that's really bad.
I wonder if you could create like hardness modes for your game. So maybe if you wanted to put like an expert or a hardcore mode, you can make those bounding boxes smaller so their shooting would have to be more precise and on target.
Yeah, actually, that's a really interesting concept, and one of the ways I'll show you how to do collisions, you can do that very easily by using a object that's separate from yours. So I'll show you that, and then I'll show you how you can make a second one and switch it in and out.
Cool.
So another thing we need to cover is directions. So directions in GameMaker is something that you have to get used to, because if you've done any type of algebra or anything in the past, the GameMaker directions are a little different. Even if you've done maybe some physics stuff in using like box 2D, etc. Whenever we're talking about direction or using direction in GameMaker, you'll see that we'll use numbers, 90 for up, 270 for down, and then on the XY axis, 0 for right and 180 for left, which is completely different from other physics engines, like box 2D down in the bottom. 270s to the right, 180s down, etc. So that's something you need to internalize. That's something you need to know. And on top of that, one of the things that's interesting in GameMaker is there's two different types of collisions. You can have physics in GameMaker, but by default, or what they call the classic view of collisions, is not using physics in GameMaker, as opposed to some other engines like Unity, which actually uses box 2D for their 2D stuff. You have the physics world and the physics right out of the box. But in GameMaker, like I said, classic way to do it is just to detect XY axis, direction, and all that stuff. In addition, the next thing on the slide you'll see is the coordinate system. So since it's 2D, we're not worried about a z-axis, right? In and out, but we're worried about the XY axis. So you'll see when we're doing movement or anything else, when we're on the X axis, we're going to use negative numbers to go left, and we'll use positive numbers to go right. Same thing for whether we're traveling up and down, whether we're going up a rope or going up a ladder. And we're talking about the Y-axis. We're going to be going positive for up and negative for down. And then the GameMaker room, everything's a coordinate. Starting from the upper left-hand corner, it would be XY would be 0 to 0, all the way to the bottom right-hand corner. And I don't have a number there because, quite honestly, it depends on how big you make your room. So everything is in relation to this XY coordinate grid. So let's go ahead and look at some of this. Let's open the platform starter kit.
I really want to see that enemy explosion collision. I'm excited for that one.
Okay, so let's go ahead and just open the sprite. So bounding boxes and collision masks are actually done on the sprite itself, not on the object. Although in code you can swap these things out. And if we do modify mask here, we saw a little bit of this when Natalie was going over sprites, but the collision checking's right here. And if we click on Modify Mask, you can see that we have bounding boxes. This one's, by default, it's going to be set to automatic. And automatic is going to find the pixels inside of the graphic itself. And I could probably...
Yeah, I want to see how close that is there.
Graphic itself, and it gets really close. You can do the full image, and you can see it's going to go and expand itself to even the transparent part of it. And then you can do manual. And manual is, let me go back to here so I don't have to
Does
do as
automatic
much.
usually cut it off at the right place, or?
Yeah, it does. It does. Obviously, if it's transparent, if you've by chance had like a pixel that you didn't realize was over here, it's going to go over there. So it reads the non-transparent pixels, and it'll put the bounding box around that. But what I was saying before is if we do manual, I can actually move this over, 15, and move this over to, 30. That's maybe a little small, right? But now collisions are all going to happen when it hits that bounding box. Right, so this is what I said about like Pac-Man, where you're able to kind of touch something else with your pixels without killing it or getting the collision. And again, that's not a bad thing. A lot of people will create bounding boxes that are very similar to this for that exact thing. Now, precise, if we click on precise, let's go back to automatic and go back here, bring it back up. Notice when I do precise, it's going to go pixel by pixel all around the whole thing. And that's, you might find some time that you want that, but this is utilizing a lot of CPU cycles because it has to loop through stuff and check pixel for pixel, not only in your object, but other objects as well to see where it's hitting. So it's really CPU intensive when you do this type of stuff. Okay, let's go ahead and show you something else. So you'll notice that I have this square mask here. This is something I use all the time in my games, in my 2D platformer games. So this is a image that is just a square. And a lot of times my characters will be slightly different, but very close to the same size, maybe just slightly taller or slightly smaller, slightly thinner. And when you're working with collisions, you want them all to be able to jump the same way and land the same way and, you know, not get stuck on the side of a wall the same way. And so what you can do is create one mask and then use that mask for your image. So instead of you defining it on each and every one, if we go down to objects here, let's see, objects, and we open up my object player simple, you can see that I can set a mask here. And so I've set that square mask. So the mask is it's going to ignore the bounding box of my original sprite, and it's going to use the bounding box that's set on that square mask. And that makes it very easy for every character that I have in the game to work exactly the same way. It's a really good way to do that. So let's go ahead and open up another project. So I want to show you a little bit of how movement works. And I know Natalie's going to be going into events, so I'm not going to do a ton here.
Yeah, I'll be doing that in a sec.
But I just want to show you right and left. So movement's pretty simple. You can see that I can add events, and she'll show you how to add events and all the different types you have. But you can see on screen very simply you have left and right keyboard. And you can map these to different functionality. So obviously this is a keyboard left arrow and a keyboard right arrow, but you can take those same events and map them to whether you have a controller plugged in or whether you have on-screen controls. So the coding is done once and it works for all three types of things. And if you look on left, it's going to do a couple things. It's going to jump to a position. And again, she'll explain all these. But you notice that it's going -3. So I want to, whenever I hit the left key, I'm going to go -3 pixels on the x-axis. I'm going to transform the sprite. And what that means is that I want to flip it over. So if he's facing right, I want him to be facing left. So I'm going to flip him over. And then I'm going to set the image speed to 7. We'll talk about animation a little bit later and how that works, but this is setting how fast the animation is going. So if my guy's walking, and let's go ahead and run this, and I'll show you what I mean by that. If the guy's walking, he'll be very, let's see. See how when he stops, he's got one icon, where when he moves, it looks like he's walking? That's setting the animation speed for that to move left and right. So movement's pretty simple. You just have to decide how fast you want to go. I could have decided to go, a little faster, and instead of doing -3 or +3, I could have upped that a little bit. So you get to decide that. Another cool thing I want to show you is actually, I'm going to show you the bigger version of this, and this is a trick that really helped me in Dave in the Cave, because you can create an object. I think it's this one. You can create an object for blocks, right? And it could have grass on it. It could, be your platforms, and you can add those to your game. But when you put objects in your game, they're going to always take up CPU. They're a heavier type of thing in your game. And sometimes you have blocks that are just the top that they're walking on that they're going to interact with. And then below that, they're never going to touch the dirt way down below. So if you're using objects to do that, your game's going to get really heavy and it's going to slow down. So one of the tricks you can use, and I can do this by showing you the room quickly here. Let's start at room 0. You can see that I have blocks, and this is just that red block. This is what he's going to interact with. But below that will just be the pictures of ground, of skulls. Anything that I want to interact with will be an object, but the stuff I don't want to interact with, you can even see the vine that he climbs up. He's not actually climbing up that vine, he's climbing up this object that I created. Now these are not visible, and if we look at that in the tree here, like the object block, you can see that it's solid, but it's not visible. The ladder as well is solid, but it's not visible. But if we look at the sprites, you can see we have, the ground, the water splash, etc. So these are a lot lighter and they're a lot easier to place in the room without having to deal with collisions for those objects.
So when I first started with GameMaker, I remember being a little confused about what makes a simple object versus an advanced object. So how do you know which of your objects you want to be simple or advanced?
Well, I think the difference is not necessarily a simple or advanced object, but the difference is really whether you're going to use an object to paint your room, and you use that if you need interaction to it, or whether you're going to use a sprite to paint your room. And so those are the difference between the two.
Okay.
All right, so the next cool thing we're going to show you, you notice that first game, let me bring that up, the smaller version of that. This one. If we run this, and again, this is just a sample, you notice that, if I go to this other side, I'm done. That's it, right? So there's not much more I can do. There's only so much you can do in this real estate. But what we can do is use views. So let's talk about views here. Now, views is something that allows you to take a level and really go crazy. And I'm going to show you two different ones here. I'm going to show you both in the sample platformer game. And they have views, but they're kind of small views. And then I'm going to show you in Dave in the Cave and show you how you can really do some cool stuff. Let me bring up the platform game first. We'll just go to level 1. And expand this. Now you can see right here that I can move over, and the room is much bigger than its original size. And if we go to, I think I need to actually grab the Views tab up here. And then we'll do, let's see, Control 4 so you guys can see this a little better. You can see that first I need to enable the use of views in the room. I can have multiple views, so there's a couple times you want multiple views. If you have a two-player game and you want to show things side by side, you can use multiple views. Normally you'll have one view in a room. You want to make it visible when the room starts. And then you want to set the size of the view. So the size obviously does not need to be the size of the room itself. The size of the room is going to be much bigger than the view. But this is all that the player is going to see. The important thing, though, is the view needs to move. So down here, you want the view to be following an object. And so in this game, the guy is called Object Player Simple. So when he moves around, the view is going to move around. So let's show you what that looks like. Just close the room here and run this game. And let's get far enough. So you notice how the room starts moving. again, this is another great way. We said backgrounds were a great way to add more to your game, but you'll notice that he can go all the way to the end, and the room follows him. Now you set the box around where he's going to be. You know, it's something about playing games. Oh, he died. I was going to say I need to finish it. Even when I'm doing a demo, I need to finish the level. But you can see how views work. But this is even still a small view. If we look at Dave in the cave, and let's open, you can see I have 20 levels, and this took me a long time to do 20 levels because you had to think of different ways to challenge them as it got farther and deeper into it. So let's look at level 18. And you can kind of get a view of it if, let me do Control 4 down here. If I look at the room view, so the view is right here up on top, but you can see the size of the actual room. And if I, let's do Control 4 again, and if I use this to kind of pan around, you can see how deep it is. So he drops way down into a cavern through this rope. All the way down here, there's obviously lava and springs and other stuff. So it makes it a very hugely expansive place to play. If you think of classic Mario Brothers used views, a lot of the old classic platformers, as opposed to something like Donkey Kong. And I know I'm showing my age with these games, but if you think of Donkey Kong, that was a one-level, one-room type thing, as opposed to Mario Brothers, which utilize views to make the world very expansive.
It's cool, too, because it makes the level look so much bigger than the room actually is.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's
a little world for them.
Yeah, when you're playing a game, if you can see the whole room, it's kind of easy to figure out. But when you can't see the whole thing, and I actually have one level in Dave in the Cave where he's carrying a torch. So even when you're going around, you can only see a certain amount around him, which adds
really
even
cool.
more intrigue to it. So I couldn't do the ropes, but I was able to do a torch, which was pretty cool. So it's probably a good segue into events. We kind of looked at events a little bit as I was poking around stuff, but that's something you need to do a little bit more and a little deeper. And so, Natalie, you want to show them how to work with events?
I wanted to look at the events that we have on the Object Player Simple here. So this little guy here, if we open that up here in this column, we have all the events. So you can see create is how you would do a new one. And the step one is actually the whole game loop for this player. So here it goes through kind of like the timeline of exactly how his step works. So you can see it's checking for where the floor is and setting the gravity. Also seeing if there's an object, starting the block, setting the gravity for that. And the way I kind of think about events, it's almost like every object in your game, you have to set a whole timeline for it. So if you're going to jump onto a block, you have to set the start of the block, the gravity, the end of that, any sort of collision that you might have. So if we go down here, so destroying the instance of this block here. So on the right here, you can see all of the options for what you could add to your event. So we have the moves, the jumps. It's cool also because you can do things like health score, live score. You can also draw things. So for this object enemy event, we're doing that, the interaction with the simple player. Well, he's not a simple player, I just keep calling him that. But it creates the smoke there and destroys the instance too. So that is pretty simple for adding in any events for your objects. So these ones are pretty much the same thing where it's just going through all of the actions that you would want here.
And that game loop runs at least, 30 times a second, right? So whatever you put in there, that's going to keep happening. One of the things, to see the different ones, if we want to add an event, I have the same project open. If you click on Add Event, you can see all the different types you can use. So Create, again, is when you instantiate an object. But you can have, obviously, Destroy is when you kill an object and get rid of it. You have your mouse events, whether they click left, right, etc. And these actually events you can use for touch as well. So it considers touch the same way it considers a mouse event. So it makes it easy, and we'll show you a little bit later how to do that type of stuff. But you can see, like, we have global mouse events, and what that does is wherever you're at on the screen, if a mouse click happens, it'll do that. You have alarm events as well. Alarm events allow you to set an alarm. So if when you touch a bad guy, if you want him to explode in a million pieces in 10 seconds or whatever time it is, you can set an alarm to have that happen, so to pause stuff. So alarms are really great. She talked about the step event as well. The step event is where you're going to spend most of your time. Now there's a begin step and an end step that you can add stuff to have happen before the loop starts happening and after it starts happening. But most of the time you're going to be in that step event and you're going to have a ton of code in there.
So the collision part is, so if I wanted the player to collide with the coins, so if I'm collecting the coins, I could add it in here. So, you would just pick whatever you want there, and then you could add the actions here on the right. Oops. So the keyboard, is that how in your game you would do for touch maybe?
Yeah, so the keyboard is, people can decide, what keys they want. Usually in a platformer, they're either doing the arrow keys or they're doing the WSAD keys, depending on what they want. And sometimes they'll map both. So you can actually have the same code map both. So if we wanted to actually do that, it's a really cool trick. One of the things is, when we're talking about GML versus drag and drop, in GML, GameMaker language script, you can actually write the code that if this, or this, do this. Where in drag and drop, this is where it can start getting a little heavy. Say we wanted to have this be something else as well. Actually, I'm in GML. I can right-click, and I can do duplicate event. And if I wanted it to be another keyboard, like where the keypad, or if I wanted letters, there we go, W. And so if I wanted the same thing to happen on left and W, I can set that and duplicate it so it'll happen no matter which they hit. So that's a really cool feature.
Very cool. So I think that was pretty much everything that we wanted to cover in this module, collisions, views, events. So why don't we take a quick 10-minute break, use the bathroom, get some coffee, and we'll start up again soon.
Thanks. Welcome back to building your own 2D game in GameMaker. My name's Daniel, and
I'm Natalie.
In this session, we're going to talk about finding assets for your game. So when you're building a game, you obviously need something to interact. And one of the great ways that you can do that is to find stuff on the internet. And so Natalie's going to show us some really cool sites that allow us to do that.
So I'm over here on freesound.org, just in my browser. So it's this really cool website that has a multitude of free sounds that people have put on here. So I'm just on the home page, and let's take a look at some of the fun stuff that they have. So this horror lullaby, that's pretty creepy.
That's very creepy.
Let's see what else they've got. A wind sound could be useful. Interesting.
Is there a way to search for sounds on here?
Yeah, let's see if we can find something really random.
Let's let's keep on the Dave in the Cave theme. Let's search for cave.
Cave.
See what we got.
Do caves make sounds?
Might be cave sounds.
They're really caves.
See?
So apparently you can find a sound for anything.
Ooh, very funky cave.
Cool. Ooh, a sea cave. Oh, they're both playing. It's nice that they have the downloads and the comments on the side, so you can kind of get a feel for how good the sound is going to be before you commit to it.
So it's called freesound.org, but are they free? You can just use them, or?
Yeah, so I believe that, you have to look at the common licensing issues for this. Let's have a look at what's
that's
legal.
tagged right next to them, right?
Say what?
It's tagged right next to them with their licenses?
Yeah, they are. Where does it say that? Here. I was reading over in the developer section.
So when you created your game, did you use sounds from here?
Let me turn this off. It's playing. Yeah, so I created a game called Mysterious Mushrooms, and for mine, I actually found my sound on here as well, too. I needed So my game is like a first-person shooter in this fantasy garden. So I was trying to figure out what kind of sound or music I would want for that kind of backdrop. So for mine, I think I looked for something like a fantasy forest. I have no idea what it's called, so I won't be able to find it on here. But just to give you an example of how you can find music for probably anything. Ooh, bird cry. Or you could do like dark, mystic music. But Daniel, where did you say you were seeing the licensing?
So if you look here on mine, maybe I think I have to Control 4 here to.
Oh, that's what those are.
Yeah. So if you highlight here, I don't know why that popped up. Let's get that going. Control 4. There we go. So right on the side here, you can see like this one.
Oh, okay.
It's not.
What is that little?
You know, it's not doing it with it.
Yeah, it's not really previewing it.
Yeah,
oh,
no.
but on mine, I've clicked into this song.
There you go. Now,
yeah, it also says like here, track can be modified to suit needs, or sometimes the author, publisher, will specify what you can do with their work.
so they could be Creative Commons, they could be public domain.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
So I think you just need to make sure you look at that, because you don't want to have a crazy game like Flappy Birds where all of a sudden after you make $1 million, someone wants to come after you, right? So,
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
That makes sense too. They have more info about that here on the developers help page. And the forums are useful too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the great forums as well. There's actually a lot of people that just love making sounds, and so they contributed them here for other people to use. Cool.
Yeah. 2,000 posts about legal help. That's nice to know.
So what other options do we have?
Yeah, so more free stuff for your games. You can go to opengameart.org. So that one's, so it is super easy to create your own assets, but if you don't have that time or you don't want to, or you're just kind of messing around using GameMaker and you don't want to commit to a certain art style, maybe you want some filler art, your gut reaction might be to go to big images, but just to be safe with like licensing and using art like specifically easily importable for games, gameart.org is a really good place for that. We can take a look at some of the stuff here, and it's easily downloadable once you have an account there. They've got some really cool stuff on here. Let's see, what can we search for? A little dude, perhaps. No little dudes. But I think you could do an art style search over here. Oh, they have music as well. And you can actually search by license, which is probably cool if you are familiar with what these licenses mean.
Cool.
Very cool. So, one other thing I wanted to say about freesound.org is you could download some of those sounds and then take them over to Audacity. So Audacity is a program that you can use. It's really simple.
Actually, before you go there, I have a couple I want to show you that you might not be aware of. My favorite, and this kind of possibly bleeds over into what I'm going to be showing later, because this site does both. This guy is fantastic. It's called, you ready for this URL? 2dgameartforprogrammers.blogspot.com. And this guy gets what it means to be a developer, meaning you're not an artist, right? So he walks you through step-by-step how to create stuff, which is what we're going to do next, but he also has a lot of stuff for download. It's a fantastic site. I go here all the time, both for learning and for getting cool, great art.
I've seen this. It does like a full step-by-step, right?
Yeah, and we're gonna kind of do that. I'm not as good as him, so we'll see how we do in the next one, and you'll learn by proxy. But again, he has stuff you can download as well. So he has some really cool asset packs you can get. Another one, as we talked about this earlier, but it's a good to kind of go back to it, is Yo-Yo Games Marketplace. So you can get sounds here, you can get backgrounds here, you can get fonts here, all the stuff that you need for your game. They're putting in the marketplace as well. Some are free, as you can see, and some are charging for them. But either way, these are a great way to get them for your game. And I told you how great that the support forums were. So in the community support forums, there's actually forums for you to put out job offers. And quite honestly, not all of them are paid. I actually had in a previous game a background that someone created me for a swimming game that they did it for free, and all they actually wanted was the ability to have their name in my game. So there's a ton of resources out there for you when you're building your GameMaker game. You just have to go find them and make use of them.
Yeah, that's really cool. There's so many options for getting free assets for your game. That's really nice to know. So whether you get your sounds from Freesound or the Marketplace or Open Game Art, you can take any of those back to Audacity. So that's that program that I was saying is a simple sound editor. So you don't have to be any sort of DJ or sound wizard. But so I downloaded Audacity, and we had that link up on one of the slides earlier, I think. And then you could take any file that you download here and import it over in Audacity. From import over here. But so for me, I wanted to create one of my own customized sounds. So I was thinking, I was just at home and I was trying to figure out what sound can I make without having to embarrassingly record my own voice. So I took a...
You didn't want to like do an explosion?
No, I had like a friend with me and it was uncomfortable. So I got a chip bag and I just made like rustling noises, and I was just using my laptop too. So let's play it without like any real edits on it. I might have added one thing, but there's pretty much nothing cool on it yet. So let's see.
Is that you flushing a toilet?
No, it's the it's the rustling chip bag, but it could be a flushing toilet in my game.
So, and Audacity's a free open source tool, right?
Yes, exactly. That's another awesome thing, another free tool for you to use. So if you have your recorded sound or any imported sound, so I have my little clip here. If you imported it, it would show up here too. And then you can go over to the effects tab up here and pretty much just mess with it. So let's see what they have. They have the echo one. Okay, let's see. Let's try.
So flushing a toilet in a cave.
Well, you could have that to Dave in the Cave at toilet level. That would be fun. I wonder what the wah-wah is. Let's just mess with some of these knobs. Daniel, you'll have to give me some of your DJing tips here.
I will try.
Okay.
We actually, as you're showing this, we do game building events for kids, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, etc. And one of the cool things is we use Audacity, and they just come in a room and they bang things together and they make wailing sounds and coughing sounds, whatever to put in their game, and they love it. It's a great thing to do with a kids group.
Let's see. That kind of sounded like churning bubbles or something. Yeah, when I was making this, the friend I was with, he had recently been on a game jam with 7 people in their team, and he said what they did was they all just made like different sounds with their voices, like pew pew or explosions, and then they just changed the pitch on all of those and mashed it up, and it created this crazy sound that didn't even sound like it was just like a bunch of people in college making sounds in a room.
Yeah, actually that's where I think you hook people. So it's cool to find images on the internet and pull them in and grab them, but when you actually start creating your own assets or modifying them or hearing your own voice in the game, it really makes that game special to you.
Yeah. So you can pretty much do whatever you want. This is kind of a time to get fun with it. And then once you have a sound that you're, whoa. See, I totally transformed that sound from toilet to spring or creepy clown or something like that.
Cool.
So once you have some sort of sound that fits your game or you want to make it fit your game, you can go over here and actually export that file. Export as an audio. So if you're just messing around in Audacity, you'll just want to save the project like you would anywhere else, but that doesn't make your file ready to use yet. So save project if you're still working on it, or you need to take a break, and then if you're actually ready to put in your game, that's when you would export it as an audio, and save it as something, and then you can add in all these values, whatever you want to put in there. Okay, and just save that, and then later we'll be ready to import that into GameMaker and use on whatever you want. So you can make effects here, whether it's just a level up sound and you want to do that with your voice, or you could grab a bunch of like the background noises that we found on one of the free sites and make like a full background continuous loop to play throughout your game. So you can have effects or background music, any of that stuff here. You can actually make that all in Audacity if you didn't want to take someone else's pre-made stuff.
Yeah, that's really cool. So in this module, we talked about how you can actually get free stuff to put in your game to get really creative. And so we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come right back, and we'll show you how to actually build your own assets going forward. Welcome back to building your own game, 2D game in GameMaker. My name's Daniel.
Hi, I'm Natalie.
Last module, we showed you how you can get some free assets, sounds, images, pictures, and this time we're actually going to show you how to do it yourself. So we're going to start with showing you how to create your own sprites in Inkscape. And then we're going to, after that, jump over and have a little fun with sounds. Personally, when I'm doing stuff in a game, I feel real invested when I actually create something. And one of the cool things, and one of the things that I like to show is I'm not an artist. If you put me in front of a board, if you put me in front of paper, put crayons in my hand, I couldn't draw to save my life. I'm a developer. And even beyond that, I'm a back-end developer, so I wasn't even great at creating forms. So I didn't think I had a lick of art ability. The great thing with a tool like Inkscape is I found out that even as a developer, even someone who doesn't think they can draw, you can draw in Inkscape. And that's what we're going to show you today. So let's go ahead and get started. The tool we're going to be using is called Inkscape, and it's from inkscape.org. It's an open source scalar vector graphic program, and I'll show you what that means. It's very similar to other programs, Adobe Illustrator or CorelDRAW, etc. But again, this is open source and free, so I love using it because it's easy for people to download and show them. So let's go ahead and open that up. If I open up Inkscape, the first thing that you're going to notice, and we talked about this with GameMaker itself, is that when you look at this IDE, there's just a ton of stuff all over the place. And so what I first like to do is get people focused and let them know that when I'm showing you this, you're not going to touch every one of these things. You're going to look at a few pieces and probably about 6 things you need to really get creative in building your art. The first thing I like to do is go up here and go to File. Oh, and one thing I'll add before we get started. Yeah, one thing I'll add before we get started is Natalie has never done this before, and so I'm putting her on the spot. I'm going to teach her live how to do this.
Yeah, I've never even opened this thing, so you'll see it all here.
Trust me, I'm a professional. I've done this before, and so we'll see how cool it is. And before she even starts, one of the coolest things about game art is it doesn't matter exactly what it looks like. If it's your character and you drew it, it'll look cool in the game, and you'll be invested in it. So let's go back to Inkscape. The first thing I like to do is, I personally don't like this page thing here. It kind of clutters it up. So I'm just going to go to File and Document Properties, and uncheck this box called Show Page Border, and then close this. It just gives me a wide open space. There's some uses for that, but we're not going to dive into them. Now, over on the left-hand side, you can see a lot of different things we can work with. We're primarily going to work with circles. We'll throw some squares in there too, and maybe use a pen or two. But we're going to use circles. So first thing we're going to do is click on Circle, move over to the environment over here, hold down your Control key, and create a circle.
Mine's red.
Yours may be a different color, depends what the default is or what you used last. The last time I used this, I must have created a black circle. And that actually brings us to our next point. I'm hoping at least I don't have to teach anyone how to use a color picker. Down here on the bottom, you can see there's different colors you can choose from. We're going to create a game character, so we're going to create one that has a skin tone. If you want to create a monster, make them green or red, you can choose what you want. I'm going to choose a skin tone.
Can mine have pink skin?
Yours can have pink skin. That would be a fun monster, right? Not a very scary monster, but a fun monster.
How did you add that border to yours?
That's a great question. Again, one of the things that Inkscape does, and mine might be slightly different than yours, is because it remembers what you did last. Now, when I draw my game characters, I like that border. And to get that, that's called the stroke. So down here, let me...
Oh, the fill stroke?
Yeah, let me bring this up for everyone else. Down here on the bottom, you can see fill and stroke down here. And so that's an easy way to get to it, but If you want to just double click on either one of those, it'll open up this panel on the right hand side.
Okay.
And there's two things that affect stroke. The stroke paint, which is probably black already. There could be a different one, but it's probably black already. And then stroke style. And you can see I have my width pumped up to about 20.
Oh, okay. Mine's just 1 right now.
Yeah. So you want to pump that up. And again, it depends on the style you start working with when you're creating your character. So, we have our head.
Wait, sorry. Actually, mine's not getting any thicker. Oh, wait. It did.
There
Cool.
you go.
There you go.
And so now what we want to do is we kind of want to work with this head, and I want to give it an ear. And so I'm going to actually click over here on the circle again and create a smaller circle. And I'm dragging just to show again. If I hit Control and click drag, it makes it a circle.
So the control keeps like the ratio or something?
Yeah. It'll snap you to the circle properties. And if you don't want that, obviously you can do an oval, and that's just click and drag. So whichever shape you kind of want. Again, you don't have to do it exactly like I'm doing. If you're following along at home, you don't have to do it exactly. One of the things I will show you is right now we are a circle, and it enjoys the properties of being a circle. We'll talk about nodes a little bit later, but you can see there's a few nodes on here. 2 of them are square, and 1 of them is circular. If I grab this with my mouse, I can make this into different portions of a circle. The reason I point this out is because, remember, Inkscape remembers. So if I drew a next one, it would have that Pac-Man shape as well. And we don't want that.
Which button did you press to move that?
So I have to be selected on it.
Yeah.
And if you just have it selected like this, you actually have to have the circle selected over on the left-hand side.
Okay.
And then the circular node allows you to change it.
Can you put my screen up there? It's not doing it. Oh, I see it. Yeah, see, I'm dragging this part and I don't... Wait, not that part?
No, so let me bring that up again. So there's 2 square ones. If you drag the square ones, it will just squash it.
Yeah.
And the circular one,
Oh, there you go.
make it a circle, yeah. There you go.
Cool.
And it's an important thing that I bring this up. It's not just to make it a half a circle, because I want to show this tip early. 2 things. If you're working with a circle, you have your selector tool. It's not a circle anymore, right? You can move it around, you can modify it. To get back to the properties of a circle, you have to have circle selected. And one of the things that always happens is next time you draw a circle, it's going to be this shape. You notice when you have circle selected up here, up on top, you can have 3 options here. And to make it a full circle again, you click on this top option, make it a whole ellipse, and you have your circle back.
Cool.
Okay, so now we want to move it over. Now, 2D characters, you're always kind of looking at the side of their face, but not completely the side of their face. So we're going to make him looking to the left, and his ear is going to be over here to the right. And we can leave it like that, but that kind of makes it like a Princess Leia type thing. It also looks like a nose if he's looking this way. We're going to show you a trick that you'll use time and time again. Now, there's only a few key things that you're going to use to work with Inkscape. Inkscape's a powerful tool, but we're only going to work with a few of them. And what we want to do is highlight both of these, because I don't want a circle on top of a circle. I want these to make one object. So if I click on one, I hold down Shift and click on the other, you can see they're both selected. Mm-hmm. It's easy to do. You can also lasso them.
Yeah.
That's harder to do when there's more objects, because they'll be within the lasso. And what I want to do is go to this Path tool. Now, this Path tool, again, has a lot of stuff, but the menu items are pretty self-explanatory. I want to actually make this ear part of the head. So I'm going to do Path, and then Union. You can see now we have an ear on the,
Oh, cool.
on the left-hand side, so it brings them together. But you'll also notice that it's no longer a circle, right?
Yeah.
I can't get any circle properties, so the circle's gone.
Mine doesn't really look like an ear.
That's okay. It doesn't have to look exactly like an ear. Mine doesn't even look like an ear yet. So the next thing we want to do is draw some eyes. So those are pretty easy. Let's go ahead and I'm going to hit the Control button and scroll wheel.
That zooms in.
Yeah, just to make it zoom in a little bit, so we have some room to work with. And I'm going to grab a circle again. I told you this is not going to be rocket science. And I'm going to create an eye.
I'm going to make these different colors.
Yeah, the color is going to be, I'm going to make mine white, of course. And actually I want to make the stroke a little bit less on the eye. So I went to the stroke panel over here on the right and changed the width to a 10.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess that doesn't have to be as thick.
And then we want an eyeball. And you're going to use this all the time. We need to duplicate this item. So we need to make an exact duplicate. So just Control D makes an exact duplicate.
Oh, okay. It's faster than...
And it'll put it on, if you do a Control C and a Control V like you might be used to, it won't put it right on top of it. There's sometimes where you want it right on top of it.
All right.
So you can see there's some properties here. We can make this bigger or smaller. So if we have just the selection tool selected, we can make it bigger or smaller. We want to make it smaller.
Oh, I see what you're doing.
And then we're going to make that my eyes are going to be blue, right? And then with that selected, I'm going to do Control D. I'm going to make that black. Get a little smaller for the eyeball. And then I'm actually going to make it give me a little glimmer in the eye, and I'm going to do Control D. Make that white.
That's cool.
And kind of make it like so.
Mine doesn't look that way yet. Okay, let's see.
It's okay if it's not perfect. If it's close, it's cool. It's very pink. Yours is kind of a monster. Yes, I'm actually liking it.
Oh, the glimmer. Okay.
All I did is clicked on the smallest one, did Control D again,
Control D.
and then made it smaller and made it white. Yeah.
Very cool.
Now there's a lot of moving pieces in that, right? So we want to lasso it. And you notice that even though I'm lassoing on top of the head, it's not grabbing it. For the lasso to grab stuff, it's got to be contained in the lasso. And if you haven't done a lasso before, it's just click, left click, and pull down. Because we want to be able to move this as one item and not have the eyeball go all over the place, right? So we're just going to do Object and Group. You might have done this in PowerPoint before, another program. It's not that big of a deal. And actually, while we're here, I'm going to show you this too, because you're going to have things in front of each other or back of each other, and you need to move them. This is probably something you've done before, but these right here will lower it to the bottom or bring it to the top or step it.
Okay.
So if it's ever something behind it and you want it in front of it, just use these tools right here, lowering or bring it up.
Yeah.
Again, it's not tough.
Heavy.
So now we want to, our person has two eyes, right?
Right.
So we want to, what would we do to
duplicate that whole group, maybe?
Control D. We want to move it over. And so we have perspective. We want to make it a little smaller, right? Because that one's a little farther away. So he's starting to, kind of look like a character here.
Mine looks like a little puffer fish or something.
But again, like I said, that's not, actually it does look like a puffer fish. But that's the cool thing. One thing I'll mention in working with this and when you're creating your own sprites, don't worry about the amount of detail, because this is what it looks like in Inkscape.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like in your game. Maybe that. So you notice the white, it's still showing up, but when you get little tiny detail, it's not going to show up. So when you're working with sprites and when you're creating your own stuff, just make sure that you're not going crazy on the little detail, because you'll spend hours and hours and no one will ever even see it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so next big thing. So Inkscape has a concept of nodes. So you'll notice, first of all, scalar vector graphic is different than a program like Paint.net or Photoshop, where you're working with pixels. And when you work with pixels and when you expand them, they get pixelated. Right? You can see the little squares. Scalar vector graphic doesn't do that. It doesn't matter what size you make it, it'll scale to that size. You can see it's not losing the fidelity at all. So that's what a scalar vector graphic program is. And the reason that's cool is because, say you create a game character and you want it on a phone, and you also want it on a tablet, you're going to have different sizes depending on what you're going to put it on. So you want to be able to export them in different sizes without having to recreate it at different sizes. Okay, so the next thing we want to talk about is nodes. So again, we're only working with a few tools over here. The selector tool is easy. We've already worked with that. We'll play with it more. The one right down that looks like a selector tool is a node tool. If I click on that, you'll notice that our guy changes a little bit.
Yeah, it's like a red border coming up.
Well, just like the circle, it now has these nodes. And what this allows me to do is move things. So I don't like this ear. So if I click right on those squares, I can move those. You can see that it's got a Bezier curve on each of those too, so I can, make it the curve exactly how I want it. And honestly, now mine's looking like a fish too.
Yeah.
So I can Control Z back out of there. We'll leave him like that.
Fin.
This, there you go. See, your person can be a fish. That's great. This, to me, was the absolute power of being able to do something in Inkscape, because when I draw it, I can't erase it and draw it again. But in here, I can kind of know what I want and then just keep nudging it and keep nudging it and keep nudging it. And it gives me, like this ear is probably a little too big, that circle I put, but now that's looking like an ear, right?
Mine's adorable now.
Yeah. So you'll notice that there's nodes that are already on here, but what if I wanted to pull it out here, or maybe give him a jaw right here? With this selector tool selected again, all I do is click on my object where I want it, or double click I should say, and now I can pull that out.
Oh, it's so silly.
And so, wherever you actually want that to happen, I can actually make that his nose if I want. I can bring that up. Kind of looks like a nose. We're not going to spend a ton of time making him perfect. That's what, the time when you're working on this on your own, you can spend the time tweaking it. And that's, again, the beauty of this, is you can tweak it until you're happy with it. Okay, next we need a mouth. And we're going to, again, take a circle. See, I'm doing this all with circles. We're not even going crazy in any of these other tools yet.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to put a mouth right there. And to move it, I went from the circle selector to the select tool up here, and I moved it. And he could be yelling like that. You notice that we've already moved this and made it bigger and smaller, but if I double click it again, you notice that the arrows change. And this allows me to turn it on its axis, and you'll know it shows me where the axis is. Now we're going to use this for arms and feet later, but you notice if I move that.
Which one was that?
So if I'm here,
yeah,
and it's selected, if I click on it again, it'll give me that tool. And then it might not show very well. Let me zoom in here. Right here is where I'm talking about. You can move this, and then it will spin on that axis, whatever that axis is.
Okay, I've turned mine.
And so I moved mine over, so you see now it spins like that. It doesn't make much sense now to change that, just to show you, but it does when you're maybe using arms or legs and you need the axis to be at the shoulder or at the hip, right? So let's actually make it back a circle. It's still a circle, right? And so we want to do what we did before, because I want half a mouth. Maybe we want a screaming mouth. Let's actually leave it like that, because we already showed you the half circle. But I'm going to make the inside color of it black. And I want to draw some teeth. Now you don't have to do this. I could go in here and grab something and draw some teeth in here, or I can do a square one. And
that's cool. I want to add like 2 front teeth onto my little fish.
And I can draw some teeth on there. But what I want to show you is not just how to draw perfect teeth, but how to use a technique you'll use again and again and again. The first thing I actually want to do to make sure it cuts perfectly, you'll notice that we still have a stroke on here.
Yeah.
I want the stroke off.
Yeah, I guess you don't need to outline the mouth.
So we saw up here on the right-hand side the fill-in stroke. On the stroke,
Press the X.
just press the X and it's gone.
Cool.
I want to make it black again, so it's his mouth, so we don't have that border messing with us. The next thing I want to do is use this tool over here. This is one of the 5 or 6 that you're going to be used. It's used to draw.
Second pencil tool.
Yeah, it's right under the pencil tool.
Yeah.
And it's used to draw Bezier curves, and some people might go, what's a Bezier curve? Who cares? You know,
Doesn't even matter.
This is teaching developers how to draw, right? So we're going to do this pen-looking tool, and that's what we're going to use in a second here. And all we're going to do is move it over here, and we're going to click outside the mouth. Okay. Anywhere outside the mouth. It doesn't even need to be perfect. We're going to move. You're not dragging, you're just moving. Click outside the mouth again. Click up top here. Just make sure you don't intersect the mouth. And click here, and then end right where we started.
How did you get yours to be straight lines? Mine's like curving around.
You're clicking and dragging?
Oh.
Yeah. So if you click and drag, it'll do that. If you just click, and then click, and click, and click. So I will do that once again for everyone watching. I just click, don't hold down your mouse, click outside again, outside again, outside again, and then finish where you started. And we have an object. I like to just to fill it so we see what's going on. So I'm going to fill it with white. And you see we have 2 objects. Now I want to make those teeth fit exactly in that circle, precisely in that circle, without me having to go and draw that in. And so we're going to intersect these 2. So when you use an intersect, it will make one object out of 2 objects. So before we start, we need to click on our mouth. And how do we duplicate again?
Control D.
Do Control D. And then we want to grab 2 objects, so we do Shift and grab the teeth we drew. And we go to Path and Intersection. If you look at these things, you can kind of see what they do, right? So intersection will give me the exact teeth right on top of that, right? You will use this again and again, whether you have like an arm and you need to draw a shirt on it, or you need to, whenever you need something to fit exactly on top of another shape, you'll use that again and again and again. So it's still kind of a basic mouth, but that technique.
I don't know if mine looks like teeth, but I get what you're saying.
Close enough, you know, close enough.
Yeah.
The next thing I want to do is use that Bezier curve tool. So I want to make the ear a little bit more. And so I'm just going to, outside of the head, click, 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 and finish up here and make a triangle. I want to fill it in using the color down here.
So you can really draw any shape with this, or is it better to do straight line shapes?
You can draw a lot of stuff with this. I do not have the ability to do that. I'm the put it on there and then I'll fudge it around.
Yeah.
But yes, you can go crazy. People will have the drawing boards that they use to actually freehand. Again, I told you I can't freehand. But again, it's made me so excited to realize I can actually create characters. So we're going to go back to the node tool.
Okay.
Because we want to modify this triangle. So with this is selected, I can turn it and stuff. But when the node tool is selected, I can actually modify this triangle, and I kind of want it like that.
Can you show how that worked? Mine's not bringing up that many.
So if you already have the triangle, all I did was, with it selected, I went to the node tool, and then I double-clicked right on the edge here, and it gave me another node, which allowed me to just kind of pull it in like that. Let me I can make that bigger.
Mine doesn't have another node.
Okay, let's
doing this right?
Let's delete the whole thing and start over. It'll go quickly. Delete. So I grab the Bezier curve tool. I just go click. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Click, 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 and click to finish it. And then I'm going to fill it. And then I'll click the Edit Path by Node. And it will automatically, at the corners, have ones.
Yeah.
And then I just double-click on the edge with this selected. Double-click.
Oh, okay. Very cool. So you can make as many as you want.
Right.
You could turn this into some crazy complex shape. Awesome. And then those are the ones I can just pull out to the side?
Exactly.
So
Let me do that one more time for my guy. I need to make it the right size here. And I'm going to kind of just make it like that. Do it quickly. I want to make a copy of it. I need 2 of them, or 2 more of them. So Control D and Control D. I'll put one there. And actually, I was going to use a couple of these, but you'll find this out too, that I'm just going to move them like this.
I made mine into gills.
Yeah, you just start. That's exactly right. I was going to actually use 3 of these, but I think 2 might do. You can see he had his ear before, and actually I think I like 2 better. So now that gives him a definition of the ear, right? And I would tweak that more. You can see how I did it with Dave later, but you can see now that looks like his ear, right? With very simple shapes, so nothing crazy. Okay, so here's the fun part. We are going.
More fun than this?
It does. It does. This is where people really like it. So we need to draw hair, and drawing here, we're going to use that same Bezier tool.
Okay.
So we're going to click on that Bezier tool.
Do I want to make it thicker?
Nope.
Okay.
Don't need to make it thicker. So we need to let's start. I don't know. Click right here on his head.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go up here, over his head. Actually, let me start over again. I'm making sure I'm not going into his head here, and you'll see why in a second. I'm just doing some crazy shapes. Remember, he's sideways, so I'm going to make some maybe bangs out here. And I'm just moving and clicking, moving and clicking. I actually want him to have some crazy sideburns. Connected together, just like we did with the triangle, just like we did with the teeth. And then we color it. He's going to be a redhead. And bam.
I was trying to make a mohawk.
Yeah, see, you've never done this before, right?
Oh, it's
That's
adorable.
a cool looking fish. That's what I'm saying. This is a fun tool, and it's a fun tool for developers. So I'm going to go quick. We can spend a ton of time on this. So I'm going to show a couple more techniques really quickly. One is we wanted to maybe smooth these nodes out, right? So it's not all crazy sharp. So with this selected and the node tool selected, I can lasso these top ones up here. Okay, so I'll start that over again.
Okay.
I select the hair. I select the node tool.
Here, the node tool.
And then using the node tool, I'll lasso these ones on the
the
top.
top.
And yours might be a little different, so you might not need to do this.
Yeah.
And you see you have all these different options. And these are really just for you to play with as you get comfortable with them. But there's one called Make Selected Node Smooth. So I smooth it out, and now his hair is not as choppy, it's more wavy. You notice,
Oh, okay.
you notice I left
Yeah.
this sideburn sharp.
Yeah, if you don't want him to be as much of a rock star, you can.
Right, and so you just play with that. So I'm going to create a very quick body just by doing another circle again. And again, it's in front of him. You know, I would spend time, I would create a neck, I would create all that stuff. I'm going to create, I'm going to use the square tool, rectangle, squares. And so if I click on that, it's used the same exact way. Now, you might notice that there is a circle on here as well to modify it, and that will round the corners. So if you wanted rounded corners, you can do that. And actually we do, because we're making arms and legs.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I want to do is do some simple arms and legs. I'm going to do Control D for the arms, for the legs, we'll say.
What was that rotate option again?
So rotating it, you want to, actually I'll show that in a minute,
Okay,
because
cool.
that's part of what we're showing. And then I'll do one more, Control D, and I'm going to make this black for the arm so we can see it. And I'm going to do this quickly. It's exactly what we did before. I want a hand down here, right? And I want it to be the color of his face. So I'm just going to do a simple hand by doing stretching across. This is the same way we created the teeth. I want it to be flesh colored. I want it, if I don't remember what color I picked, here's a color picker right here. Again, you've probably used a color picker a million times. I want to make it that color. So don't forget, we need to make a copy of this, do Shift, and then do Path and Intersection. And so now that looks like a hand. I'm going to group it by doing Object Group, and I'm doing this quickly because we've done this before. But the last thing I want to do is we need to make sure this twists. And I told you if you have the selection tool selected and you click on it, it allows you to make it bigger or smaller. But if you click on it again, it allows you to twist it. But this thing right here, see if I can get that big enough for everyone to see, is where it's going to rotate. Its axis. And we want these to rotate at the shoulder. I'm going to move that up. And so now when I rotate it, it'll rotate like an arm should. I'll make a copy of it. Put one here. Rotate this one. Put it here. And of course that needs to go behind his body. And we're done. I mean, we could go crazy on this. The only thing I'll show is you'll notice in the platform starter kit, the walk cycle for him is just his legs going up and down. Easiest way to make a walk animation in GameMaker is to make different images where his legs are going up and down.
Oh, yeah.
And that's exactly what the robot does in there. Yeah, it's very quick way to do a walk cycle.
Yeah.
So let's see your final fish.
I have like a little arm just stuck
Nice.
at the bottom. I was trying to make like those little tiny dinosaur
Again,
arms,
and you're not an artist, and you've never done this before, right?
I don't know. Yeah, no.
That's what I'm saying.
Not an artist.
I love showing people this because I'm always in awe of their creativity. That's a cool looking
mohawk
fish. Yeah,
with
the mohawk
tiny
fish.
arms.
Right. I love it. Okay, so let me show you a few things because you might think, oh yeah, well that's cool, but yeah, it's not that great. You know, what can I do with circles and squares, right? So I first want to show you my original Dave in the Cave.
Dave in the Cave. There he is.
This was my original, my first pass at it. I used a lot of stuff, and I was actually proud of him. But then I started working and playing with stuff, and here's my finished version of Dave in the Cave.
I like the pants on that. They look wrinkly.
Yeah, without his, and I'm going to show you how I did that. So that was without his hat.
Yeah.
And one thing we didn't talk about in this short video is layers. You can see that I have different things on different layers so that I can take them off and show them and splice them. We're not going to go that deep into this. But what I did want to show you, his legs, I'm actually glad you pointed out his legs. If I actually highlight all this stuff, you'll notice it's made up of a bunch of different pieces. It looks pretty complex, but if I start moving this out, you can see that the shadow is just like the triangle we created, shape. Right? And just a different color, just another shape. Huh. Same for this one. Look at his pant. And I start moving this out, you can see.
Yeah, they're just
circles and squares that I've modified. This is just a rectangle. And this was just a circle. I'm like, okay. And then this was another rectangle that I go, oh, it'd be cool if his jeans were out. And so I just grabbed it and pulled it out, right? And I can do this, and if I just put it there, you notice that I was like, oh, let me grab this one out. I'm like, oh, that looks bad. How do I fix that? Oh, I'll just grab another circle and cover it up.
Yeah.
Right? So altogether, it looks complex. And the whole thing is built like that. So just because we did a simple character here quickly, the same techniques I just showed you, you can use to build more and more complex ones.
Or something onto this guy. That's awesome.
So let's talk about the next steps. in that.
How do I get my little fish in the game?
Yeah. So this was also very difficult. So the more complex your character, the more difficult it is going to be to animate him. So Dave is actually a kind of, for me anyway, a complex character. He's got a lot of moving parts. And I've never done this before. I go, well, how do I make him look like he's running? And so I searched on the internet for run cycle. And so I found this image and go, okay, so if I place him in these poses, when he's in the game, he'll look like he's running. This took a lot of time.
So did you just move around the shapes to create the different poses? Like you moved around his legs and stuff?
Yeah. Piece by piece by piece.
Good thing you had those grouped.
Yeah, so remember that the more complex your character is, the more difficult it is going to be to animate him. If I can show you one more, my new guy called Little Guy, and this is another game I'm working on. You can see that he's got a lot of cuteness, but his arms and legs, he doesn't have arms and legs, he has feet and hands. But people don't notice that in a game. And like once you get your own style that you like, you'll notice that your art always looks the same. So I took the same little guy and I turned him into a Martian, I turned him into a football player. And
little outfit.
Yeah, I'm from Chicago, so I made him a cubby as well. And with this one, you can see that I was very quickly able to animate him. And we'll show everyone how to pull him in. So we're not going to spend the time to animate the ones we just created. I just took him and moved his feet.
Yeah, that must have been way faster than doing those legs.
And it's still a little choppy. I could take a little bit longer to move that. But remember when you're creating your game and you're creating your assets to think about the complexity of your characters when you're doing that.
Right.
So was that fun?
Yes, I'm very proud of my little mohawk fish.
I'm actually very proud of you too. I love showing people this, and I'm amazed. We were just at another session, and this guy never touched before, and he had this amazing dragon with this tail that was flopping up in the air, and I'm like, you've never done this before, you've never drawn before, and he's like, no.
This tool is so easy.
Yeah.
I really never looked at it until today, and now I'm like, ooh, I want to see what that star thing does, and the spray can looks like the old thing in Microsoft Paint where you can just spray all over your guy, but I'm very proud of my little mohawk fish.
Cool.
Indeed.
So, along with creating your own characters, creating your own sounds is another good thing to do. So, again, and let me tell you why you want to create your own characters, and I use this analogy all the time. So, you notice that Dave in the cave, we showed earlier, there was some lava in one of the rooms. And when he jumps in lava, I wanted his head to catch on fire. Well, if you're getting a sprite sheet from the internet and part of that sprite sheet doesn't have your character's head on fire, you can't do it. And it's hard for you to recreate someone else's art. So creating your own characters and creating your own assets really give you the ability to go with your creativity and follow it. And again, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't have to be better than another artist. It just has to be yours and look interesting. So in addition to that, or on top of that, I think sounds is the same thing. So I have a couple things to show you on sounds. So sounds, to me, are a ton of fun. So we already showed in the last section how you can get sounds from the internet. A ton of fun to actually go into Audacity and make your own explosions or make your own, pew-pews and gun sounds and all that stuff. But sometimes you want some background music, or you want stuff in the game that is very specific to your game. In Dave in the Cave, I have him walking up a ladder. I have him picking up coins, different sounds that need to happen while we're working in the game. So I'm going to show you a couple tools that are really cool. And just like I'm not an artist, I'm also not a musician. So this one tool I'm going to show you is called Soundation. I always put an N in there for some reason. It's just at soundation.com. And this tool has free parts to it and has paid parts to it. You can just sign up. You can see I'm already logged in up here on the right-hand side. And I'm just going to go ahead and click on Launch the Studio. Now, this has a bunch of channels for you to mix music together.
And this is all in the browser?
It's all in the browser and
cool.
Allows you to export it from the browser. So we have different channels, and I'll show you, we're not going to go into every aspect of music mixing again. This is just to show you how you, as a developer like me, can create your own stuff really easily. So I'm going to go ahead and choose one of the audio channels, and the first thing I'm going to do is a drum machine. Drum machine is always fun. If you do know your sound stuff, you can change this to your heart's content to tweak it exactly how you want. There's different drum kits, etc. I'm going to leave the default and just close that. And then I'm going to click on the timeline by the drum kit. I'm going to double click on the sound timeline just to create it. Let's try and reboot that. Soundation.com. Bring it back to drum machine. Close that.
So you can pick any
There we
instrument
go.
or sound you want, I guess.
Yeah.
That's cool. You can make a full rock band or something.
Yeah, so it wasn't like in my double click, but now it is. So you can see I have a piano here on the side. I have drum machine selected. So you notice if I click up here, nothing's happening. You have to be down here around C3. And you'll notice all the drum stuff. You can see there's a clap. There's different types of drums, different snares, etc. And all you need to do, and I'm going to start with the clap, is use this pen tool right here. I think the clap is this one. And you just need to place them on the timeline. And I can go ahead and run it. I want to make sure it loops. And if I run this, I can actually add one here. So I got a nice clap going. We want to add some stuff to it though. Let's find some other things to add to it. Add these to the timeline. Run that. So it's starting to get a good groovy beat going. I can add some other stuff. Might be getting a little funky.
Yeah.
But we'll go ahead and stop that. And close this, because besides drums, we want, maybe the piano. Let's do simple piano. There we go. And so we can make this a little more mysterious. Let's play it.
That's coming together.
Yeah, so see, I'm just clicking around. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm just clicking around. And you play with this. And so, in different levels or when different stuff is going on, you want the music to change. And again, this is from a developer. It was really cool to, I can't plug in my organ and get the MIDI on there and create something with my fingers, but I can move this stuff around. Again, this has been fantastic for me. So you can create your own like this. And let's go ahead and stop that before it drives you crazy. And let's actually delete these. Because you notice down here over here on the right-hand side, there's some other stuff as well. So there's free sounds. Again, there's a free part and a premium sounds. And so you can dive into here and see other stuff that they have. So these thankfully let you know whether they're 125 beats or 130 beats, so you can kind of match stuff together. You can preview them.
Can you add effects onto your own sounds in here?
Yeah, so you can.
Those drums.
I could have left those drums. So you can take what we have here, and so this is a beat clap. I'm a child of the '80s, so I obviously like a good clap. So I could just drag it up here, and let's see. Maybe I want Beat Crazy. Let's see what that sounds like. And I like that too. So let's move that up here. And then I don't know. Let's try some other ones here. And I think we'll pair these together. And I'm going to do Control-C, Control-V, and go here. And I can keep extending this out. The one thing I need to do is make sure the timeline, this yellow bar on the top, stretches all the way to the right. And we can go ahead and play this. And so you can just mix these stuff together and have a lot of fun. Yeah, it's really easy to use. You know, might actually take a while for you to tweak it to be exactly what you want, but it's a fantastic tool. The other tool I want to show you, let's stop that, is something, it's a very simple but great tool that I've used myself. It allows you to do very simple sound effects for picking up coins or other stuff. And it's SFXR, and it's at drpetter.se, and you can find it there. I have it already downloaded. And you can check out the README file to find out more how to use it, but it's very simple. You just open it up, and it has the sounds you'd expect from a game, picking up a coin. Let me actually make that a little louder for this one. And you notice that as I'm clicking this, it's giving me different coin sounds. So there's an explosion. If I like that one, I can play it again to make sure. Yeah, but I can modify it myself. So you notice I did a slide and it projected it a little bit more, a little repeat speed.
So that has like common game sounds you might need?
Yeah, common game sounds, laser shooting, power-ups, laser shoot, etc. And I love this tool, and I've used it. Obviously,
I've known about this.
Yeah, every gold piece that I have in there is using one of these sounds that I created to pick up a piece of gold in Dave in the Cave. So it was very helpful to me. And then, of course, like you showed Audacity last time, I could tweak it even more by pulling in an Audacity and using that. But that's all we had for today in this module. Hopefully you enjoyed building character in Inkscape. Fun. It was a lot of fun. And we're going to take a quick 10-minute break, and we'll see you guys in a little bit. Welcome back to creating your first 2D game using GameMaker. In this section, we're going to just bring it all together for you. We're going to take everything we've learned, everything we've created, from the flushing toilet sound type thing to the sprites, or at least a version of the sprites that we created, and show you how to bring that into the game, both sounds and animations. We're going to end with creating new rooms. We'll do that at the very end. The first thing I want to do, though, before we show you how to bring in sprites, is to actually talk a little bit, go back to the sprites we created. We showed you at the end of the last module some of the sprites that I had for Little Guy. We didn't want to spend the time to make the ones we created walk. So Little Guy, you'll see here, has a very easy walk cycle. I'm just lifting up his foot, bringing it down on the other side, and scooting the other one back and trying to go forward. You'll see that's still a bit choppy, but in case this isn't readily apparent to you, and like I said before, I'm a developer, it wasn't readily apparent to me, this is animation. That's how they do 2D animation. It's just moving the character bit by bit to make it give it the illusion of movement and animation. Now, very quickly in here, I wanted these to be all the same size and placed the same way. I made this one a color of yellow so you can see it, but each one of these panels has a square around it. That's 1100 by 1100. I just wanted to make it square. And I just moved him, copied it, moved him over, did our Control D, moved him over, and along I went until I was happy with this base cycle. And then all you do in Inkscape, actually I'll show you one more thing before I do that. You notice these little lines here, that's a really good tip, is you can pull down from the top or pull down from the side, and you have these grid lines that you can use to help you align things up. But to export these, all I do is just lasso the whole thing. So you can see they're all selected, and then I do File. I would actually make that one not yellow, of course, but File, Export Bitmap. And I've already set this up because I've exported this once before, but by default, this would have been a height of 1100, which is the size I made it. Remember, a scalar vector graphic can be any size. When we export it, we send it to the size we want. So I made the height 64, and I went and sent it out. And so that's what Natalie's going to show us how to import this and pull it into the game.
Yeah, so now that we have Daniel's sprite already, I have that on my computer. I'm over in GameMaker, and I'm going to go over to the sprite section that we had here. And I'm going to do create new sprite. I'm going to load in the sprite that I have, not my face, this little guy strip. And here we can go into edit sprite and look at some of the stuff that we can do in here. So I want to do file create from strip. Oops.
No, you're good. You just go from there. Create from strip, yeah.
And then I wanted to do 6 images, 6 per row.
Essentially what you're doing is you're taking that strip and you're slicing it into individual pieces.
Yeah.
And you have to know the size. Obviously, I already showed you it's 64 by 64.
So now that we've got those, yep, that's 6, we can do show preview. And there he is, he's walking.
And you can see he's walking very, very fast. Down on the bottom, they have a speed, and this is just a speed that allows you to visualize what it looks like in the game. That's not going to actually be the speed in the game. You can write code in the game to change the speed of the animation to best fit your needs. But if we actually go back to that and maybe zoom in, if you have zoom in open, you can see it a little better up on top there.
So here I'm just moving it down to 5, and he's doing...
If you do a Control 4 instead, it'll give us live.
Ah, there we go.
There you go. So you can see him walking. We could maybe make this a little better. He's a little choppy, but you know he's got his
doing a little.
He's got his groove going on.
Yeah. So I zoom back out. Yeah, here it actually notes that it's not the speed in the game. So once we've got that at what we want, maybe I'll put it at 15 or 10, happy medium, and then we can go ahead and save that, and we have our new sprite. I'm gonna name him little guy. And Daniel, I think that's all we wanted for this little guy, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So, you know, we didn't just do animations and characters, but we did sounds as well. And so next we're gonna talk about doing sounds. And while we're doing that, or before I should say we're doing that, I wanted to point something out. First, I'll pop this back up here really quickly again. If you have not downloaded the starter kits, trust me, these will really help you get to a place where you can build your game rapidly and have a lot of fun doing it. It's just aka.ms/gm starter kits. And what's included in this, I want to show you, is not just, let me open that up, starter kits, is not just the games themselves, but documentation as well. And the documentation takes you through everything you need to do. So if you want to change this and make your game your own, it shows you what pieces you have to create. It shows you what characters you have to create. It shows you what sounds you want to change. And then it shows you how to alter and change Windows 8 features to fit you. There's some basic Windows 8 features there, like playing a sound or showing a hello world. But this will walk you through changing those stuff and adding your brand to really make these starter kits your own. Because adding sounds, she's going to show you how to add a sound, but it's pretty much a pretty easy import to add a sound. So if you want to go ahead and show them that.
Yeah, so here in the tree, we can go over to sounds. And then I'm going to look for that yo-yo toilet flushing sound that I made earlier. So if I go into sounds and create a new sound, I saved that to my desktop, I believe. There it is. And we can preview it.
The weird toilet flushing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there we have it. That's pretty much it. You import your sound, press OK, and now we can see it showing up here in the sound tree, and we can apply that for whatever we want to do.
So for the starter kit, the platform starter kit, we actually took that one, and a buddy of mine took it and created his own. And so I'm going to show you what that looks like. So this is the same platform starter kit that you saw before, completely modified with different graphics. You can see this one's called Girder Gary, but it'll work the same way. Girder Gary obviously jumps up on girders, same way it worked before. And he needs to collect the buzz saws instead of the other stuff he was collecting. And in this game, the pigeons are deadly, right? You can see the background was changes, the platforms changes, the enemies were changed, the characters were changed. It's actually pretty cool in the third level on this where there's water. The pigeons actually have scuba tanks on and stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, again, it allows you to take what we've given you and completely make it your own and have a lot of fun, whether it's just you or with your kids moving forward.
You can reskin it and make it your own.
And the last thing we want to show you is how to create new rooms.
Yeah, so I'm going to go over showing how to create new rooms. So over here, was there one thing you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. So over here, I'm in the rooms part of the tree, and I can go to create a new room. And I think I'm going to make it size, oops. Okay, I'm going to start by putting in the background actually first because I want to see how that fits. And I'm going to put in the starry background that we had over here. And then I'm going to go back and let's mess with the scale a bit. Actually, I'm clicking on object, so settings is what I wanted. Cool, so I'm gonna do this test room. Pick a size 2048 by 546. So actually what I was doing just now when I was changing that thing was not correct. So I don't want to do the object stuff yet. I was just trying to change the size of the actual room. So I would change that in settings, is where I would do that. And default had me in zoomed here, but I want to just zoom out and pan to make sure I can, see everything that we're going to have in this room. So now that we have this size the way we want it, I'm going to go in and add some tiles into this room. So let's see. Actually, first I'm just going to add the object that will be the floor and use that as my path. You can also use the color picker to change certain objects or backgrounds, but depending on what you've done with the backgrounds, if it's complex, like if I change this just because of the way we have the background set already, it's not necessarily going to change. But if you were using like a solid color, you could do something with that. So anyway, back to the objects that I was showing. You can place these in by pressing left click. So here we picked object to add with the left mouse, and I picked the floor. So it's adding in a bunch of floors, and I'm going to create like this path, basically, like and you saw the game where he was walking near the pigeons. I'm kind of creating that path for our character to walk and jump on. And you can speed this up by holding down Shift and Control. And we can just randomly place a bunch of these all over the place.
Very randomly placed.
Yes, it's going to be a wild level.
And of course, in this room, you'd be using a view like we talked about before, since it's so large.
Yeah, and I want to add in my actual player so that we can see, we can try this out. So I'm going to left click and drop him in here. And then I think that's everything I want to see, and I'm just going to go ahead and run this.
You might be stuck in the wall. Check on that.
Is he? Okay. Well, I'll just move him there to be safe. Don't want anyone to get stuck. So let's see what happens. My path is pretty crazy over here.
Yeah, it is.
So in your game, did you build different paths for each level, or how did you decide?
Actually, I drew them out. So I would take either Inkscape or another program and kind of plan it out before I started building it out, because they really started to get very complex by the end, by level 20, where I really wanted to make it hard for them to finish the game, although some people have already. One of the things actually I noticed is you haven't. Oh, you got it working?
No, sorry, that was playing something else.
Yeah, you have Windows 8 in your drop-down. So you might need to go over here.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want to make that Windows EXE, that will pop up.
Okay. Oh, the other thing I realized is I talked about this earlier, and then, of course, I forgot to do it. So over in the rooms, I want to play the room that I just made, which is the test room. So if I want that one to play first when I press run, I have to move that to the top of this hierarchy tree. All right, so now we have the target windows, room at the top of the tree. Let's see what happens. Cool, so we can see the player, he's jumping on my crazy path, and it's the same controls because we already put those in earlier. But there you go, you have the background, the size that we specified, our little tiles. So you can really make this as hard or as easy as you'd like to, which is, I mean, what Daniel did with his game, having so many different levels, keeps things creative with, you know, the different patterns you can make.
And I can show them a couple tips as well in the room. So one of the things you might have noticed in hers is you have these grid showing. For me, when I was working quite a bit, once I knew the size of my grid, you can see this one snapped at 16 by 16. It got in my way. Now I can always turn it off very simply by clicking on this button up at the top here. Let me do Alt 1. This button right here will allow me to turn it off and turn it on. But that can get annoying. Every time you have a new room, you have to do that. So let's escape out of there. And if we go to File and Preferences, where is it? Forms, I think. No. Somewhere in here, and now I can't find it. Well, you can find it later. It's somewhere in Preferences to turn it off. Do not show grid on, and I know I'm looking right over it. Don't show grid when you show it. Yeah, it's in here somewhere. So you can turn that off, so every time you create a new room, it's not showing you that grid. The second thing I'll talk about is one of the things that I found out when I was creating my game is every single room had some things in common. So my game at beginning gave you a time limit, and then after I realized that people got annoyed that their time ran out, I actually still kept the timer in there because they got points depending on how quickly they finished the game. So I knew things like the timer object, which is right up here. Let me go up there. The timer object, I'm always going to have in there. The object controller, which we haven't talked about, I was always going to have in there. I had some platforms and some gold pieces as well. So you'll notice down here, at the very bottom, I have a base room and a base room new with different stuff in it that I didn't have to create every single time that I created a new room. I would use this, I would right-click on it, and I would do duplicate, and then I'd start my level from there.
Oh, that's neat. So you don't have to redo all of the little bits of work.
Yeah, it'll save you a ton of time.
Once you
and
have that
I have
many
a different
levels.
and I have a different version of this that actually had more in it. Also, I'll reiterate this again. Now, the floor in that sample game is an object, and that can get very, very expensive if you keep using objects. And so you'll notice even in my game, I have tiles here. The tiles is a tile sheet that I created, and these rocks that you see are just tiles. There's absolutely no interaction with the characters on those tiles, but underneath those, and I think I can...
Did you bring those tiles in as you to get those assets, or?
I did. Okay. So if I do show tiles and uncheck that, you can see what the actual world is built on. And so those are the things you interact with. So it allowed me to really get creative with what the tiles looked like, and that covers it.
Yeah.
And these, if we looked like before in the Explorer, these green tiles are not visible in the game itself. They're only visible in the surface.
Oh, okay.
So there's a couple tips that will help you in your game development when you're working in rooms. I think that is all we had for them today. The one thing I'll add at the very end is it's a lot of fun to build a game, and you can actually get pretty far quickly. It's the last 10% that's going to get you. When you're taking score and counting up gold and doing the leaderboards and doing the in-between screens or doing the level screens, that is really where it'll take you time to finish your game, to be able to publish it, to put it in the marketplace. But if you persevere and get through that and get it in the marketplace, you'll really have a great sense of satisfaction, and it's a lot of fun to talk to your friends, talk to your family, and say, hey, download my game, and to have them play it or have them have their kids play it. So hopefully you'll follow along, you'll take the starter kits and have a lot of fun with them. Again, I'm Daniel. We hope you enjoyed this session today here with Natalie.
Can't wait to see what you guys make.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Endless runners are fun, and quite honestly, after building Dave in the Cave, which we'll show you again today as well. Oh, let me change that. We'll actually show you how to fix that later and why that error came up. It's part of the Windows 8 development stuff. And so go ahead and click on this. Endless Runner's really cool because it allows you to actually create a game. Jump. Got it. It allows you to create a game quickly that can last a while, because one of the things you'll learn when you're building games, if you're building a platformer game, the hardest part, in my opinion, was once I got the basics and the movements and everything else, was designing the levels and figuring out levels. And building 20 levels takes a long time, where an Endless Runner gives you the ability to do one and then just throw different stuff at them. So I actually enjoy Endless Runners quite a bit. Okay, so one of the interesting things that Natalie mentioned earlier, she mentioned drag and drop. So there's two different ways to actually build a game in GameMaker. One is using GML, which is their GameMaker language, and then one is through drag and drop. And originally, like she said, the game was made for his students, and he wanted them to easily be able to, not write C++ code, but to drag and drop different items and give them the ability to create a game, get the excitement of building a game, and quite honestly, be very sneaky in teaching them programming. Because even in the drag and drop, you're talking about if loops and variables and stuff like that, but in a drag and drop way. So I'm going to show you just quickly a little difference between the two. So let's go to this game, and I'll show you what this is. This is like a half-made game. You'll see the full version of this game later. But you can see that I have a little guy that can jump around. Traditional platform game. Not much here, just the basic blocks for him to land on. And if we look at this, let's go ahead and open up this room, and we'll go through these things a little more later. You'll notice that if I hover over him, I need to start up zoom it so you can see this. If I put my mouse over him, you'll see that right down here on the bottom, he is a object player D&D. So he's a drag and drop player, and it's named that because I named him that. But if we actually look at the objects themselves, we can see there's two, and we'll talk about objects in a little bit, but there's two players, and it doesn't matter which player actually dropped in the room, because if we look at them, let's open up the drag and drop, and we look at the regular object player, we can see that there's two ways to do everything. So in the drag and drop guy, you can see that every single thing is something that I've dragged over from the toolbox, whereas the one that's using GML, I'm actually writing code. Now, we're not going to dive deep into the code today, but the interesting thing about GML in GameMaker is that originally, like I said, he did drag and drop, but he wanted to make it easier for developers to do some simple advanced stuff using code instead of drag and drop. But what has happened over the years is most developers are using GML instead of drag and drop. You'll find that in the forums. You'll find that when you're talking to developers. It started out as just a kind of side thing, but it grew and grew to be able to allow developers to do some really cool stuff, some advanced stuff using GameMaker. So while we're in the IDE, I think it's important, and Natalie's going to help me here, whenever you open up a new development environment like this, for me, I'm comfortable with this. I've been using it for a while. But if you think about the first time that you used Visual Studio, if you think the first time you open it up, you're just like, wow, what are all these things? What are all these panels? And GameMaker can be, the same as that, where you're looking at it and you have no idea where to start. So what we're going to do is just give you a little lap around the IDE so you get comfortable with it. So Natalie, you want to start on that?
Yeah. So if we look over here on the left, we have what you could call the tree. So if we zoom into the top, we have our sprites here.
Darker during the day. The colors and the bleeding on the colors you chose for your character can get a little darker to reflect the room or the time of day in there. Again, they're a little advanced subjects, so we're not going to cover them in this session, but shaders are really cool. The next thing we're going to talk about is fonts. And fonts, quite simply, are when you want to draw something in your game, when you want to do a level screen, when you want to put some text out there, the fonts allow you to not just use the standard fonts, Arial, the stuff that you're used to, but you can create your own custom fonts so that your game has its own custom look. And that's where you'll find on fonts. And then timelines. Timelines actually have a timeline in the Endless Runner. So let's open that up. And timelines allow you to do stuff at specific times. So you can see a step is every time a game loop runs. And so we'll talk about that when we dive a little bit more into code, but the step function is your game loop that runs every 30 times a second, up to 60 times a second. And so this is letting me do stuff at every step that I decide. I'm going to create an instance of cactus, create an instance of the fire arrow, create an instance of the bad guy. So as they were coming out in the game, I decided when they were coming out. Now you can randomize this instead of doing a timeline, but this is one great use of a timeline. Now the next section, so we've gone through most of this pretty quickly, again, to make you comfortable. This next section, your objects, this is where you're going to spend most of your time, and I'm actually going to go back to the platformer game to look at that, because we're going to look at object player. And again, Natalie said earlier that one of the things you want to do is sometimes if you're a beginning developer, this is the first time you've ever developed something, you'll see a lot of code where you'll see a lot of X variables and Y variables and zeros and ones, etc. Some of the stuff we're going to show you today is meant to show you how to organize stuff and how to create your variables in a way that not only you can read them when you come back to it, in a year to write more on your game, but other people that may be coding with you can understand what's going on. So you can see we have stuff in a nice file structure. And if we open up Object Player, the objects are where you're going to spend most of your time. So the objects in your game will utilize the sprites. You can see that I have set a sprite here. I can choose which one I want. It's this, the idle sprite to start. But here is, if you are a developer, these are like objects. GameMaker tries to be an OOP type of language, but it's missing stuff, it's missing classes, it's missing structs. But if you think of objects like you're maybe used to thinking of objects, you instantiate them. And in this create event, Natalie will talk about events in a little bit, and the create event is where you're going to instantiate things. Objects are the way you interact with the world. And objects interact together and against each other, and we'll talk more about that. They actually need somewhere to interact in, and so that would be rooms, and Natalie can show you a little around there.
So if we look over at the room tree, you'll see that we have the start splash, level 1, level 2. So the room section is actually ordered by how you have it here in the hierarchy. So it's going to open with the splash, and then you want to have it in order of the levels that you want it to play in. So I was just messing around before and making some new rooms that we've got down here. But if, let's say, I wanted room 10 to actually be my level 1, I would move that up to the top. So you can basically think of rooms as levels in your game. So, I would put that up there if I wanted that to open up. And I'd create a room the same way that I've been creating the other things in my game here. Right-click, create room. And then when you're in here, you can scale it, you can rotate it, and we'll be able to add in other things like backgrounds and objects a little bit later on. But if we go back and look at the start splash room that we have, you can see here that we have one of these little question marks up in the corner. So those are actually objects that don't have any visual representation. But if you hover over it, we can see at the bottom that it is the object splash click. So down, well, now it's not there, but at the very bottom of the screen, you can see that it says object splash click. And then it gives you a little preview here and they have the little crosses, and you can expand those to see what all we have going on here. So if we go over to sprites, we have our list of sprites here. I'm looking at the platform game starter kit. So if you wanted to create a new sprite, you could right click on the tree and do create sprite, or you can go up to the top and do resources, create sprite there. So let's just take a look at one of the ones that we already have in here. Here we have our sprite player idle. And you'll notice here that we have a really clear naming convention, because if you have maybe like a lot of levels or a lot of characters in your game, you want to keep those organized, just, good development practices. So
these are the assets in your game. This is your character. These are your blocks. These are the enemies. You have to draw them so they can interact.
Yeah, so here we have like the main player and also our little crab enemy. So you can load it in a sprite over here, and we'll look more into detail later about how you can actually put in your own sprites and do all the editing with those. But here you can see that you can change the origin on your sprite. So we just have it at the center here, but maybe you wanted your sprite to turn from the side or something. So this is just basically how you would put in your sprite and, save any changes here with the green OK button. So also in the tree, we have sounds and backgrounds. Putting those in works pretty similarly to the same way that sprites do. Right click or up at the resources to put one in there. We can take a look at some of the sounds that we've got in here right now. Let's look at the explosion. So just double click to open it, and you can preview the sounds here. Let's see. So we've got our explosion sound. Let's look at the warp portal. So we've got some fun sounds in here, and those can really add life to your game, whether you wanted to do, like a level up sound, or maybe the sound of your enemy exploding or something like that. We can also hop over to backgrounds, and here we can see we have a background for our main game. As you can see when we play the game, Daniel showed it earlier, we have that really cool starry dark blue background. And having a nice background can really make or break your game, because it really adds to the experience. If we just had like a solid gray background, it wouldn't be as fun as this awesome dark blue thing that Daniel created.
Yeah, we're going to show you some very simple backgrounds in our games, but background, if it has a little depth, even if it has the parallax effect where backgrounds are moving at different speeds, really just adds depth to a very simple game and can make the difference between just an okay game and a great game. The next thing we're going to look at is, let me do here.
We've got paths next.
Yeah, paths right here. So paths are interesting. Paths are used not all the time, but a maze game that I showed you earlier is a great example of this. You can see that I have a placeholder here for a scarab. In the maze game, the scarab is the enemy, and the scarab's going to walk through the maze itself, and I have to avoid him. So I want him to walk on a very specific path. And so in paths, you'll see that in here that you can see that he'll start where you saw him in the room, and he's going to go up and down and up and down, and he'll go back and forth. Now, this is a very simplistic one. I actually used this in Dave in the Cave to create a trolley system where he ran and jumped into a trolley and took the trolley through the whole level of mine. And so it's a great way to have an object that follows a very specific path. The next thing we're going to look at is the next one down, and it's very actually simplistic. So even if you're doing drag and drop, you're going to, at one point, probably want to write a little bit of code. And so you're able to do that using scripts. So scripts allow you to write a little bit of code that from the drag and drop area, you can actually call that script, do some advanced functionality, and move on from there. So that's scripts. The next thing is shaders. So shaders we're just kind of going to talk about. Shaders is an advanced topic, and shaders just allow you to do really cool stuff with colors. And what I mean by that is instead of just the color blue, it allows you to put like shimmers on waters, and it allows you to take an image and move it like through the day as it gets darker. Hello and welcome to Building Your First 2D Game using GameMaker. My name is Daniel Egan. I'm a developer evangelist out of Southern California. I've been a developer evangelist for about 6 years. Prior to that, I was an enterprise developer. And so coming to gaming was a little bit different to me, but about 2 years ago, I decided to build a game. The game I came up with is called Dave in the Cave. You'll see a little bit about that today. And I used GameMaker to build it, and it's available on all 3 platforms. You can get it on iOS, you can get it on Android, you can get it, of course, on Windows Phone as well. Today with me is Natalie.
Hi, my name is Natalie Golivornis. I'm also a tech evangelist. I'm located in the Dallas, Texas office. So I've been at Microsoft for almost 2 years now. Like Daniel, I also work with startup students and game developers with a special focus on game developers. Prior to Microsoft, I graduated from USC with a degree in engineering and also gained some experience at some other game companies.
So we're glad you're here today. Make sure that when you're watching, join the MVA community. There's a lot of great stuff there for you. You can get points for this. You can see everything on screen to be able to join up. Today, as we're working through stuff, we hope you can work through stuff with us. So you're going to need a few things. You're going to need GameMaker Studio. You're going to need Inkscape. That's where we're going to draw some of our assets. It's going to be a lot of fun in that session. You're also going to need Spine. Spine is a tool that allows you to do skeletons. And you'll also need the starter kits as well. So the way the day is going to go today is we're going to start with kind of an intro into game development. So when we're talking about GameMaker, we kind of want to give you a little feel about what GameMaker is all about, what the IDE is like, and get you comfortable with the development environment. After that, we're going to go into some basics of collisions and events so that when you're working in the game environment, you can see how things move around and see how things move back and forth. Next, we're going to go to finding assets for your game. So when you build a game, you obviously need characters, you need blocks, you need things, enemies, you need things to fight against. And so when you're fighting against them, you need the assets to be able to do that. So first, we're going to show you how to find them on the internet. And then after that, the next module is we're going to show you how to create your own. So that one's going to be a lot of fun. After all that, we're going to have a session that brings it all together. So the assets you created, the assets you found, we'll show you how to bring them into the game and make the starter kits that we're going to show you your own game. So Natalie, you want to start out with the introduction, the agenda?
So for Module 1, we're going to start out with a history of GameMaker, and then we'll look over the starter kits that we'll be using today and also that we provided online. Take a look at the programming languages that you can use with GameMaker, GML, and then we'll do a little loop around the IDE and look at how the tool works. And then lastly, we'll talk about the GameMaker store. So let's get started and talk about a little bit of history of GameMaker. So GameMaker was first created by a teacher named Mark Overmars, and it was a tool for creating 2D animations. And he had the intention of it being a drag and drop tool, so really simple to use. GameMaker actually started out being called Amino in 1999, and it grew from there to become what we know as GameMaker. And in 2007, they joined up with this company based out of Scotland called Yo-Yo Games. Fun fact, the CEO of that company is Sandy Duncan, who's actually was the Xbox VP, I believe. So just something fun to know about that. So what is GameMaker? GameMaker is a game environment for you to create your first game. It's really awesome because you don't need to have any programming experience, but if you wanted to do that, you could use GameMaker language. It also has an asset store, so if you're not an artist or you're not a programmer, you can find those parts to complement your game dev experience to make your first game. So let's look over a little bit at some cool games that have been made with GameMaker.
Okay, actually, we're gonna let's go ahead and do this instead. So we're gonna jump over to my PC. One of the things you're gonna see today is we're going through the starter kits. The starter kits are very simplistic, and they're very simplistic for a reason, because the starter kits are there to give you the basics that you need to get started. I don't want to overwhelm you with way too much stuff in a game, but the important thing that I like to make sure people know is the games we're showing you today don't show the full power of what GameMaker can give you. So if we look at on screen the showcase, if you go to yoyogames.com and go to the showcase, you'll see just tons of games and really cool games, very exciting, great graphics, cool interaction. And so when you get a chance, go ahead and check those out, and we'll see the great games that you can create with the game with GameMaker. The next thing we want to talk about actually is the different types of GameMaker, because this is actually important. So on the Yo-Yo Games again, if you just go to the GameMaker tab, you'll notice down here the different types or the different tiers they have. So almost everything we're doing today, you're going to be able to do with the free standard edition. You can see the standard edition is, makes you register, but besides that, it gives you unlimited resources. It gives you the ability to create the game you want. It also allows you to export it to a Windows EXE. So you can share your games with your friends. The one thing that we're going to show you today that you will not be able to do is the advertising. So you notice right here it says Developer Services Portal. And Developer Services Portal is kind of a hidden thing that means advertising and other stuff. So that's the one thing you won't be able to do today. But you'll notice if you wanted to actually export to Windows 8, you can jump over to the professional one. It's only $49. And then they have a Masters Collection. The Masters Collection allows you to do absolutely everything. Other than that, where you want to export the game can be done by just purchasing modules or jumping over. One of the cool things that's been added recently is both Xbox One and PlayStation export. So if you build your game in GameMaker, you can actually export to Xbox One. So that's actually a really cool feature. The last thing, and I do this may sound silly, but I've been in dev communities for a long, long time, and the ones that really thrive are the ones that have a great community to help fellow developers. And if you go to the support tab and jump over to community, you'll go over to their forums, and their forums are just absolutely fantastic. Developers, game developers that are there to help you with any questions you have. So if you get stuck on anything that you start trying, based on what we're showing you today, make sure you jump over to the community, ask your question. There's people there to help you. So let's actually talk about the next part. So as we mentioned in the beginning, we have a few starter kits, and starter kits are something that allow you to not have to start from scratch. So starting from scratch is tough, just putting the character on there, throwing a block on there, it can take you a while to, get your platforms or get your maze built or get your endless runner. And actually those are the three starter kits we have. We have a platform, a maze, and endless runner game, because those are traditionally the games that people like to build and that people like to play. So let's go ahead and show you those just a little bit. Let me bring that up, and we'll start with the platform. A lot of what we're going to be showing you today is going to be in the platformer game. We'll jump between a few of them, but I'll go ahead and run that. And you'll see that in my drop down here, I have the ability to run and put it on many different things, but we're just going to leave it at Windows and run the game so you can get a feel for what we're going to be working with today. So these are fully complete games, and what I mean by that is they have a beginning, they have an end, they have a few levels, and then they have things that you need. So touch screen controls, left, right, the ability to move around and jump up and down, grab coins, all the stuff you'd expect to have, enemies that kill you, etc. And so we'll go through all these features. The next one we'll show you is, some people like a top-down maze game. So if we look at the maze game, again, there's your start screen, and you have the ability to find different stuff, to walk through the maze, unlock doors, obviously grab the key. I'll keep going until I grab the key, You can see that item shows down here. So again, these are made to give you the ability to see how something was built. And the last one I'll show you is the endless runner.